Elena Rossi never imagined a single kiss could destroy her quiet life. But when she pressed her lips against Victor DeLuca's at her cousin's wedding, she sealed her fate. Victor wasn't just any man. He was a mafia boss whose enemies would kill to hurt him, and now Elena had painted a target on her own back. Within days, armed men would storm her workplace. Blood would stain her hands. And Victor would offer her a choice that terrified her more than any threat: stay in his dark world or lose him forever. This is their story. A love born in danger, tested by violence, and strengthened by impossible choices. If you're ready to follow Elena and Victor's dangerous journey, hit that like button and comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The Martinelli wedding was exactly the kind of event Elena Rossi normally avoided. She stood near the champagne fountain in the grand ballroom of the Plaza Meridian Hotel, watching her cousin Gabriella glide across the marble floor in a dress that probably cost more than Elena's annual salary. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across hundreds of guests, women dripping in diamonds, men in custom Italian suits, everyone laughing and drinking like money was infinite. Elena tugged at the hem of her simple black dress, purchased on sale 3 months ago specifically for occasions like this. Occasions where she needed to blend into the background and fulfill her family obligation without drawing attention to the fact that she was the poor relation. The art gallery manager who rented a studio apartment in a questionable neighborhood, the Rossi who didn't quite fit. "Elena, there you are!" Her Aunt Francesca materialized from the crowd, champagne sloshing dangerously in her glass. "Why are you hiding over here? Come, come. I want you to meet some of Gabriella's new in-laws. Very important people." "I'm fine here, Aunt Francesca." "Really?" "Nonsense, you're 28 years old and still single. How will you ever meet anyone standing alone in a corner?" Francesca's eyes swept over Elena's dress with barely concealed disappointment. "Although perhaps tonight isn't the best night. These people are, well, they're a different caliber." The word stung, even though Elena had heard variations of them her entire life. She forced a smile. "I appreciate your concern, but I'm actually enjoying people watching." Francesca patted her hand with wine-dampened fingers. Always the artist, seeing beauty where the rest of us see reality. "Well, don't drink too much. The real vintage is being saved for family." She swept away in a cloud of expensive perfume, leaving Elena wondering if that last comment was meant to include her or not. Elena snagged a glass of the apparently inferior champagne from a passing waiter and retreated further along the perimeter of the ballroom. The orchestra was playing something classical and romantic. Couples swirled across the dance floor. It was beautiful, she had to admit, like a scene from a movie about lives she would never live. She was contemplating an early escape when the atmosphere in the room shifted. It was subtle at first, a ripple of awareness that spread through the crowd like wind across water. Conversations didn't stop exactly, but they changed. Voices dropped, eyes turned. Even the orchestra seemed to play a fraction softer. Elena followed the collective gaze toward the ballroom entrance and felt her breath catch. A group of men had entered, but one commanded every eye in the room. He moved with the kind of confidence that didn't need to announce itself. Tall and broad-shouldered in a black suit that looked like it had been sewn directly onto his body. Dark hair swept back from a face that was all sharp angles and controlled power. But it was his eyes that struck Elena even from across the room. Dark, assessing, missing nothing. The men flanking him were clearly security. They wore the same dark suits, but their eyes constantly scanned the crowd, hands ready to move to weapons Elena was certain they carried. This wasn't normal wedding security. This was something else entirely. "That's Victor DeLuca," a voice murmured near Elena's shoulder. She turned to find one of her cousin's friends, Sophia, maybe? They'd been introduced earlier, but Elena had already forgotten half the names thrown at her. "Who?" Elena asked, though something in her chest had already tightened with instinctive recognition of danger. Sophia's eyes were wide, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "Victor DeLuca, well, people say he runs half the city. Import-export businesses, construction, real estate. But everyone knows what he really does." "Which is?" Sophia gave her a look like she'd asked why water was wet. "He's mafia, Elena, like actual mafia. The groom's family has connections to his organization. That's why Gabriella's wedding is so lavish. Her new husband's family wanted to impress the right people." Elena's stomach dropped. She looked back at Victor DeLuca, watching as he moved through the crowd with his security detail. People parted for him automatically, offering respectful nods that he acknowledged with the barest inclination of his head. Some brave souls approached to shake his hand, exchanges that lasted exactly long enough to show deference before he continued on. "He looks dangerous," Elena murmured. "He is dangerous. There are stories." Sophia cut herself off, shaking her head. "Never mind. Just stay away from him. Men like that are nothing but trouble." But Elena found she couldn't look away. Victor had reached the main table where the bride and groom sat, and he was speaking with Gabriella's new father-in-law. The older man laughed at something Victor said, but there was tension in his shoulders, deference in the way he angled his body. This wasn't a conversation between equals. This was a king accepting tribute from a lesser noble. Victor's eyes swept the room as he spoke, and for one heart-stopping moment, they locked with Elena's. The contact lasted maybe 2 seconds. Then his gaze moved on, cataloging and dismissing her in the same breath. But Elena felt the impact of that brief connection like a physical touch. Her hand tightened around her champagne glass. "I need some air," she told Sophia, who had already turned to gossip with another guest. Elena made her way toward the terrace doors, weaving through clusters of increasingly drunk guests. The ballroom had grown stifling. Too many people, too much perfume, too much wealth pressing in from all sides. She needed space to think, to process the unsettling revelation that her cousin's picture-perfect wedding was apparently being attended by actual organized crime figures. The terrace was a relief. Cool October air washed over her overheated skin as she stepped outside. The hotel gardens stretched below, manicured and dotted with carefully placed lights. A few other guests had migrated out here to smoke or conduct hushed conversations, but there was room to breathe. Elena walked to the stone balustrade and looked out over the gardens, trying to slow her racing heart. This was ridiculous. So what if there was a mafia boss at the wedding? It didn't concern her. She would finish her obligatory appearance, congratulate her cousin, and go home to her small apartment and her normal, safe, utterly boring life. Except she found herself thinking about those dark eyes, that moment of connection across a crowded room. "Get a grip," she muttered to herself, taking a long sip of champagne. Below her, in the gardens, something moved. Elena leaned forward slightly, squinting into the decorative landscaping. 2 figures emerged from behind a topiary, both men in dark suits. One was speaking urgently, hands gesturing. The other stood perfectly still, listening. Recognition sparked. The still figure was Victor DeLuca. Elena knew she should turn away. This was clearly a private conversation, none of her business. But something in the body language of the 2 men held her attention. There was fear in the gesturing man's posture, pleading in the way he kept reaching toward Victor as if to physically emphasize his words. Victor remained motionless, a statue carved from stone and shadow. Then, with a movement so fast Elena almost missed it, Victor's hand shot out and gripped the other man's throat. Elena gasped, clapping a hand over her mouth to stifle the sound. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she watched Victor force the man to his knees, his voice carrying up to the terrace as a low, cold murmur she couldn't make out the words of, but understood the tone perfectly. This was a threat, a judgment, an execution of power. 2 more men emerged from the shadows, more security. They hauled the kneeling man to his feet as Victor released him. The man was crying now, Elena realized with horror, actually sobbing as he was dragged away deeper into the gardens, toward the service entrance where delivery vans probably parked during the day. Victor stood alone for a moment, adjusting his cufflinks with calm precision. Then he turned and looked directly up at the terrace, directly at Elena. She froze, a rabbit caught in the gaze of a wolf. There was no way he could see her clearly from that distance, not with the terrace lights behind her, but she felt the weight of his attention like a physical thing. He knew someone had watched, and somehow, impossibly, he knew it was her. Then he smiled, barely a curve of his lips, and walked back toward the hotel entrance. Elena's legs trembled. She set down her champagne glass before she could drop it, gripping the balustrade with both hands. What had she just witnessed? What had that man done to warrant being dragged away by Victor DeLuca's security team? And what would Victor do to her for seeing it? "I have to leave," she whispered to herself. "I have to leave right now." But before she could move, a voice spoke behind her. Leaving so soon? The party's just getting started. Elena spun around, her heart leaping into her throat. Victor DeLuca stood 3 feet away, hands in his pockets, looking at her with those dark, unreadable eyes. Up close, he was even more imposing, easily 6'2" or 6'3", with the kind of presence that seemed to compress the air around him. His face was harder than she'd realized, all sharp angles and controlled violence barely contained beneath a veneer of civility. I was just getting some air, Elena stammered. His gaze traveled over her, assessing. Not sexual exactly, but thorough, like he was cataloging every detail, filing her away in some mental database. Your family? Bride or groom? Bride? Cousin? Distant cousin. Why was she babbling? I'm Elena Rossi. Elena Rossi. Elena Rossi. He said her name like he was tasting it, testing how it felt in his mouth. And what did you see, Elena Rossi? Her throat went dry. See? In the gardens, just now. He took a step closer, and Elena instinctively retreated until her back hit the balustrade. What did you see? Nothing. I didn't see anything. Victor's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Amusement, maybe. Or recognition of a lie so transparent it wasn't worth addressing. That's probably for the best. Sometimes seeing nothing is the smartest choice a person can make. I should get back inside, Elena said, trying to step around him. His hand caught her wrist. Not hard, but firm enough to stop her. The contact sent electricity racing up her arm. Let me give you some advice, Elena. Forget what you saw tonight. Forget you ever noticed me or my business. Go back to your life and stay far away from things that don't concern you. She should agree. Should nod and promise and run back to the safety of the ballroom. Instead, she heard herself ask, "And if I can't forget?" Victor's eyes narrowed. Then you're far more foolish than you look. Maybe I am. The words hung between them, charged with something Elena didn't fully understand. Victor's grip on her wrist loosened but didn't release. His thumb brushed across her pulse point, and she knew he could feel her heart racing. Go inside, Elena, he said quietly. Dance with some safe, boring man. Drink expensive champagne. Celebrate your cousin's happiness. And forget I exist. Is that what you want? What I want is irrelevant. This is about keeping you safe. From you? From everything I touch. There was something in his voice, not quite regret, but an acknowledgement of darkness that sent a chill down Elena's spine. She should be terrified, should pull her hand away and run. Instead, she found herself swaying slightly closer. What if I don't want to be safe? Victor's laugh was low and humorless. You don't know what you're saying. Maybe not, but I know what I saw tonight wasn't just business, and I know you're not just some corporate executive playing dress-up. No, he agreed. I'm not. So what are you? His hand slid from her wrist to her hand, fingers intertwining with hers in a gesture that should have felt intimate, but instead felt like a claiming. I'm someone you should fear, Elena Rossi. I'm someone who destroys everything beautiful that comes too close. I'm the man mothers warn their daughters about, and they're right to do it. You didn't answer my question. Yes, I did. Music drifted from the ballroom, a slow waltz, elegant and romantic. Victor tilted his head slightly, listening. Then, without warning, he pulled Elena away from the balustrade and into a dance position. What are you doing? She gasped. Giving you one moment to satisfy your curiosity. One dance, then you walk away and forget this ever happened. He moved with surprising grace for such a large man, leading her in smooth steps across the terrace. Elena had taken dance lessons as a child, her mother's attempt to give her some polish despite their limited means, and her body remembered the basics. But Victor danced like he did everything else, with absolute confidence and total control. You're good at this, she managed. I'm good at many things. Modest, too. That almost smile flickered across his face again. Modesty is for people who have something to prove. I don't. They turned and Elena caught sight of the ballroom through the glass doors. Several people were watching them, some with curiosity, others with what looked like alarm. Dancing with Victor DeLuca was apparently noteworthy enough to draw attention. "People are staring," she murmured. "People always stare. Let them. Won't that cause problems? For you, I mean, being seen with someone like me." Victor's eyes met hers, and for the first time she saw something human flicker in their depths. "Someone like you? You know, nobody important, not part of your world." "You have no idea what my world is, Elena." "Then tell me." "Why would I do that?" "Because you're still dancing with me instead of walking away." He pulled her infinitesimally closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and dark, like leather and smoke. "Curiosity is a dangerous trait." "So I've heard." The song was ending. In a moment, the spell would break, and Elena would return to being invisible while Victor went back to being untouchable. This was her last chance to do something, say something, make him remember her as more than just a foolish girl who saw too much. So she did the most reckless thing she'd ever done in her carefully controlled life. She kissed him. It wasn't planned, wasn't thought through. Elena simply rose on her toes and pressed her lips to his, tasting champagne and danger and something dark and magnetic she couldn't name. For one heartbeat, Victor went perfectly still. Then his hand slid into her hair and he kissed her back. It wasn't gentle. It was claiming, consuming, a kiss that demanded surrender and promised destruction in equal measure. Elena's hands fisted in his suit jacket, pulling him closer even as every survival instinct screamed at her to run. He tasted like whiskey and winter, like power barely leashed. When he finally pulled back, they were both breathing hard. Victor's eyes had gone almost black, something dangerous and hungry moving in their depths. "What the hell was that?" he asked, voice rough. "I don't know," Elena admitted. "I don't know what I'm doing." "That much is obvious." He released her, stepping back and adjusting his suit with sharp, controlled movements. "You just made a very serious mistake, Elena Rossi." Fear crystallized in her stomach. "Are you threatening me?" "No, I'm telling you the truth." He glanced back toward the ballroom, and Elena followed his gaze. More people were watching now, conversations clearly revolving around what they'd just witnessed. "Every person in that ballroom just saw you kiss me. Do you understand what that means? That I'm insane? That you matter to me now. In their eyes, you're important, connected, under my protection." His jaw tightened. "Which makes you a target for anyone who wants to hurt me." The words hit like ice water. Elena's hand flew to her mouth. "I didn't think—" "No, you didn't. You acted on impulse, and now there are consequences." He moved closer again, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "Starting tomorrow, your life changes. You don't go anywhere alone. You don't talk to strangers. You watch your back every second of every day, because there are people who would kill you just to send me a message." "You're exaggerating." "Am I?" He pulled out his phone, scrolled for a moment, then turned the screen toward her. Elena's blood turned to ice. It was a photo, grainy, taken from a distance, of a woman's body lying in an alley. Even with the poor quality, Elena could see the dark pool of blood, the unnatural angle of the limbs. "Her name was Sofia Marchetti," Victor said quietly. "She was a lawyer who did some work for one of my competitors. Made the mistake of being seen having coffee with me at a charity event. 3 days later, she was found dead. They wanted me to know it was a message." Elena's hand shook as she pushed the phone away. "That's horrible. That's reality, my reality, and you just stepped into it with both feet. So what do I do?" Victor was quiet for a long moment, studying her face like he was trying to solve a complex equation. Then he sighed, the sound heavy with resignation. "You let me protect you. You do exactly what I tell you to do, and you pray that I'm good enough to keep you alive. And if you're not," his smile was sharp and utterly without humor, "then you'll end up like Sofia Marchetti, and I'll add your death to the very long list of sins I can never atone for." The terrace suddenly felt too small, too exposed. Elena wrapped her arms around herself, trying to stop the trembling that had started in her core. "I should leave. Right now. Leave the city, maybe. Disappear. But too late for that. They've already seen you. Already marked you as mine." He stepped closer, and despite everything, despite the fear clawing at her throat, Elena didn't back away. "You have 2 choices, Elena. Let me protect you, or try to run and die alone when they find you. because they will find you. This is insane. Yes. I'm not part of your world. I manage an art gallery. I live in a studio apartment with a leaky faucet. I eat cereal for dinner 3 times a week. I'm nobody. You were nobody. His hand cupped her face, thumb brushing across her cheekbone in a gesture that was almost gentle. You're not nobody anymore. You're the woman who kissed Victor DeLuca in front of 100 witnesses. That makes you somebody whether you want to be or not. Tears burned behind Elena's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. I didn't ask for this. No one ever does. A door opened behind them. One of Victor's security men appeared, speaking in rapid Italian. Victor responded in the same language, his tone sharp. The man nodded and disappeared back inside. We need to leave, Victor said, turning back to Elena. Now, there's already talk spreading through the wedding, questions I don't want to answer in public. I can't just leave. Your family will understand when I explain you're not feeling well and offered to have my driver take you home. You're going to lie to them? I'm going to protect you. If that requires a few strategic omissions, so be it. He held out his hand. Come with me, Elena. Let me keep you safe. You can hate me for it later, but right now you need to trust me. Elena looked at his outstretched hand, at the expensive watch on his wrist, the calluses she could see on his palm despite the manicured nails. This was a hand that had killed, she was certain. A hand that had destroyed lives and built empires on suffering. But it was also the hand that had held hers while they danced. The hand that had cradled her face like she was something precious. She took it. Victor's fingers closed around hers, warm and solid. He led her back inside, moving through the ballroom with purpose. People stared, whispered, but no one dared approach. Elena caught a glimpse of her Aunt Francesca's shocked face, her cousin Gabriella's wide eyes. Wait, Elena said, pulling against Victor's grip. I need to at least tell my family I'm leaving. Victor stopped, studied her face, then nodded. 2 minutes. My men will stay with you. Do not, under any circumstances, mention what you saw in the gardens or what we discussed. What should I say? That you're not feeling well, that I offered you a ride home, that you'll call them tomorrow. His expression softened fractionally. And that you're sorry to miss the rest of the celebration. He gestured to 2 of his security men, who materialized at Elena's side like shadows given form. Then he released her hand and stepped back, giving her space. Elena approached her aunt and cousin, heart pounding. Francesca's eyes darted between Elena and the security men with growing alarm. Elena, what on earth is going on? Why were you dancing with that man? I'm not feeling well, Aunt Francesca. Mr. DeLuca noticed and very kindly offered to have his driver take me home. Mr. DeLuca? Francesca's voice pitched higher. Do you have any idea who that is? A friend of the groom's family, I assume. He seems very courteous. Gabriella grabbed Elena's hand, her perfectly manicured nails digging in. Elena, please tell me you're not getting involved with him. Please. My husband's father says Victor DeLuca is... I'm just accepting a ride home, Elena interrupted, squeezing her cousin's hand. I have a terrible headache, probably from the champagne. I'm sorry to leave early. But I'll call you tomorrow, I promise. Enjoy your wedding, Gabriella. You look beautiful. She pulled away before either of them could protest further, returning to where Victor waited. He extended his arm and Elena took it, letting him guide her toward the exit. The November air was crisp as they stepped outside the hotel. A black SUV with tinted windows waited at the curb, engine running. Victor opened the back door himself, waiting until Elena was settled before joining her. The interior was all black leather and dark wood, expensive and intimidating. Another security man sat in the driver's seat, his eyes meeting Victor's in the rearview mirror. Where to, boss? Victor looked at Elena. What's your address? She gave it, watching his expression for any reaction. There was none, though she was certain her neighborhood was several tax brackets below what he was accustomed to. The SUV pulled away from the curb smoothly. Elena watched the hotel recede through the tinted window, feeling like she was watching her old life disappear into the distance. Are you really going to have someone watch me? She asked quietly. Starting tonight. 2 men in an unmarked car outside your building. You won't see them, but they'll be there. For how long? As long as it takes. As long as what takes? Victor was silent for a long moment. The city lights painted moving shadows across his face as they drove through downtown. As long as it takes for people to understand that touching you means dying. Once that message is clear, the threat level decreases. Decreases, not disappears. The threat never disappears completely, not in my world. Elena leaned her head back against the leather seat, suddenly exhausted. I feel like I'm in some kind of nightmare. You are. The question is whether you have the strength to survive it. She turned to look at him, really look at him. In the dim light of the SUV, Victor looked almost human, tired maybe, or burdened. The sharp edges were still there, but so was something else. Something that made her think of what he'd said about destroying beautiful things. Why did you kiss me back? The question came out before she could stop it. Victor's eyes met hers, and for just a moment, his guard dropped. Because I'm not as disciplined as I should be. And because you looked at me like I was a man instead of a monster. Maybe you're both. Maybe. He looked away, out his own window. Or maybe I'm something worse. A monster who wants to pretend he can be a man. The rest of the drive passed in silence. When they finally pulled up outside Elena's building, a 5-story walk-up in desperate need of renovation, Victor studied it with an expression she couldn't read. "Third floor, apartment 3B, Elena said, reaching for the door handle. I know. She froze. How do you know that? Because in the 15 minutes it took to drive here, I had my people pull every piece of information that exists about you. I know where you work, where you bank, what gym you used to belong to before you canceled your membership 6 months ago to save money. I know you graduated from state with a degree in art history, that your parents died in a car accident when you were 19, and that you have exactly $3,247 in your savings account. Elena felt violated and furious in equal measure. You had no right. I had every right. You became my responsibility the second you kissed me, Elena. That means knowing everything about you so I can protect you properly. I didn't agree to be investigated. You didn't agree to any of this, but here we are. He finally looked at her, and there was no apology in his eyes. Get used to having no privacy. Get used to being watched, monitored, protected against your will. Because that's what it takes to keep you breathing. Elena's hand was on the door handle, ready to throw it open and run, but she forced herself to stop, to breathe, to think. And what happens tomorrow? Do I just go to work like normal? No, tomorrow you stay home. My men will bring you anything you need. I can't just not show up to work. You can and you will. I'll have someone call your boss, explain you're ill. You'll be paid for the time off. I don't want your money. Victor's patience seemed to snap. He moved fast, crowding her against the door, one hand on either side of her head. His face was inches from hers, close enough that she could see the darker flecks in his eyes, the tiny scar on his jaw. Listen to me very carefully, Elena. I don't care what you want right now. I care about keeping you alive. Tomorrow, every major player in the city will know that you kissed me. They'll want to know who you are, what you mean to me, whether you're a weakness they can exploit. Until I can send a clear message that you're untouchable, you stay hidden, you stay safe. Do you understand? You're scaring me. Good. You should be scared. Fear will keep you cautious, and caution will keep you alive. But even as he said it, his thumb brushed across her cheek in a gesture that completely contradicted his harsh words. Elena's breath caught. Up close like this, she could see the battle being waged behind his eyes. Control versus something rawer, darker. Why do you care? She whispered. You don't even know me. I don't know, but I do. His forehead touched hers briefly, a moment of contact that felt more intimate than the kiss they'd shared. Maybe because you looked at me and saw a man. Maybe because you were reckless enough to kiss me despite knowing what I am. Or maybe because I'm tired of watching innocent people die for the crime of being near me, and you're giving me a chance to save at least one. Before Elena could respond, he pulled back and opened the door. Cold air rushed in, breaking the spell. Go inside, Elena. Lock your door. Don't answer it for anyone except me. I'll be back tomorrow. How will I know it's you? He smiled, and it was the most genuine expression she'd seen from him all night. You'll know. Elena climbed out of the SUV on shaking legs. She made it 3 steps before turning back. Victor? He'd been about to close the door but stopped, waiting. Thank you. For the warning, for the protection, for not... She trailed off, not sure how to finish. For not what? For not making me feel stupid for what I did. Even though it was. Victor studied her for a long moment. It wasn't stupid, Elena. It was brave. Foolish, maybe, but brave. And bravery is something I understand. He closed the door before she could respond. The SUV pulled away smoothly, leaving Elena standing alone on the sidewalk. She looked around, suddenly hyper-aware of every shadow, every sound. Were his men already watching? Were other, more dangerous eyes doing the same? She hurried inside, climbing the 3 flights to her apartment with her heart hammering. Only when she was inside with the door locked and the chain engaged did she let herself collapse against it, sliding down to sit on the floor. What had she done? One kiss, one moment of reckless impulse, and her entire life had shattered like glass. Elena pulled out her phone thinking she should call someone. Her best friend Sarah, maybe, or her cousin. But what would she say? That she'd kissed a mafia boss and now needed armed guards to stay alive? That she'd seen him threaten a man in a garden, and instead of running away, she'd been drawn closer? She set the phone aside without calling anyone. Outside her window, the city continued its normal rhythm, cars passing, voices drifting up from the street, the distant wail of sirens. Normal life, carrying on as if Elena's world hadn't just been turned inside out. Her eyes fell on the small mirror hanging near her door. She looked different somehow, though she couldn't pinpoint exactly how. Same dark hair, same ordinary face. But something in her eyes had changed. They looked wider, more afraid, more alive. Elena pushed to her feet and walked to her bedroom window, peering down at the street. There, 2 cars down, sat a dark sedan that hadn't been there when she came home. As she watched, the driver's side window rolled down just enough for her to see the glow of a cigarette. Victor's men. Already watching, already protecting, already controlling. She pulled the curtain closed and turned away, but sleep felt impossible. Her mind kept replaying the evening, Victor's hand on her throat, the fear in the other man's eyes, the taste of whiskey when Victor had kissed her back. "You're in over your head," she told her reflection. "Way, way over your head." But a small, reckless part of her whispered back, "Maybe. But you've never felt more alive." Elena woke to the sound of her phone ringing. She fumbled for it on her nightstand, squinting at the too bright screen. 7:30 in the morning. The caller ID showed a number she didn't recognize. Her finger hovered over the decline button, remembering Victor's warning about strangers. But then she reconsidered. If his men were already watching her building, wouldn't they have stopped any real threat from calling? She answered. "Hello? Miss Rossi, this is Marcus Chen from the Castellano Gallery. I received a call this morning informing me that you're ill and won't be coming in for the next few days." Elena sat up, suddenly wide awake. "Mr. Chen, I'm so sorry. I was going to call you myself. The gentleman who called was very insistent that you not be disturbed. He also mentioned that your salary would continue uninterrupted and that a substantial donation would be made to the gallery to cover any inconvenience your absence might cause." Her boss's voice carried equal parts confusion and curiosity. "Miss Rossi, is everything all right? This is highly unusual." "I'm fine, just a family matter that came up unexpectedly. I'll be back as soon as possible." There was a pause. "The donation he mentioned was $50,000, Elena. That's more than unusual, that's..." He trailed off, clearly fishing for information. "Very generous," Elena finished. "I promise I'll explain everything when I return. Thank you for being understanding, Mr. Chen." She hung up before he could ask more questions, her hands shaking slightly. $50,000. Victor had just casually donated enough money to fund the gallery's operating budget for months, all to smooth over her absence. The reality of his power hit her like a wave. This wasn't just some local criminal. This was someone who could move that kind of money without blinking, who could make calls that people didn't dare ignore. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Good morning. I trust you slept well despite the circumstances. A car will arrive at 10 a.m. to bring you somewhere safe. Pack a bag. Essentials for 3 days. Don't argue. V." Elena stared at the message. 3 days? Pack a bag? She typed back quickly. "I can't just disappear for 3 days. I have a life." The response came almost immediately. "You had a life. Now you have survival. 10 a.m. Don't make me come get you myself. She threw her phone onto the bed with a frustrated groan. This was insane. All of this was completely insane. She should refuse, should call the police, should do something other than meekly follow the orders of a man who'd threatened someone in a garden less than 12 hours ago. But the image of that dead woman, Sophia Marchetti, flashed through her mind. The unnatural angle of her limbs, the pool of blood. Elena got up and started packing. By 9:45, she was dressed in jeans and a sweater, a small overnight bag sitting by her door. She'd packed conservatively, comfortable clothes, basic toiletries, her sketchbook and pencils, because the thought of 3 days with nothing creative to do made her anxious. Her hands had trembled the entire time, adrenaline and fear mixing into a cocktail that made her stomach churn. At exactly 10 o'clock, there was a knock at her door. Elena looked through the peephole and saw a man in his mid-30s, well-dressed in dark slacks and a leather jacket. He stood with the patient stillness of someone accustomed to waiting. "Miss Rossi," he called through the door. "My name is Antonio. Mr. DeLuca sent me." "How do I know that's true?" "He said you'd ask that. He also said to tell you that you taste like champagne and courage." Elena's face flushed hot. She unlocked the door, opening it with the chain still engaged. Antonio held up his hands, showing he was unarmed, or at least not holding a weapon. "May I come in? Or we can talk in the hallway if you prefer, though your neighbors might find the conversation interesting." Elena unhooked the chain and stepped back. Antonio entered smoothly, his eyes scanning her apartment with professional efficiency. He wasn't looking at her things, she realized. He was checking exits, windows, potential threats. "Are you ready to go?" he asked. "Where exactly am I going?" "Somewhere Mr. DeLuca can ensure your safety while he handles the situation your appearance at the wedding created." "That's not an answer." Antonio's expression softened slightly. "Miss Rossi, I understand this is frightening, but I've worked for Victor DeLuca for 8 years. In that time, I've seen him protect people who mattered to him with absolute dedication. Whatever you think of him, know that when he says he'll keep you safe, he means it. And what happens when I stop mattering to him? Then you pray he's merciful enough to let you walk away." Antonio picked up her bag. "But I don't think that's going to be a problem. The boss doesn't look at people the way he looked at you last night. Not ever." Elena's heart did something complicated in her chest. "You were there? At the wedding?" "I'm always there. You just don't see me." He gestured toward the door. "Shall we?" The car waiting outside was another black SUV, this one driven by a woman with sharp eyes and a professional demeanor. She nodded to Elena as Antonio held the door open. "This is Sophia," Antonio said. "She'll be part of your security detail." "Your name is Sophia?" Elena asked, sliding into the back seat. Like Sophia Marchetti." "Yes." The woman's eyes met Elena's in the rearview mirror. "She was my sister. Mr. DeLuca made sure the people responsible for her death didn't survive long enough to celebrate. I owe him everything." The words hung heavy in the air as Antonio joined Elena in the back seat. The SUV pulled away from the curb smoothly, heading toward the highway that led out of the city. Elena watched her neighborhood disappear through the tinted windows, that same feeling of watching her old life recede, overtaking her. "Where are we going?" "Mr. DeLuca has a property about an hour north of the city. Private, secure. You'll be comfortable there." "Will he be there?" Antonio and Sophia exchanged a glance. "Eventually," Antonio said. "He has business to attend to first, making sure certain people understand that you're not to be touched." "But how does he do that?" "You don't want to know, Miss Rossi. Trust me." But Elena thought maybe she did want to know. Maybe she needed to understand exactly what kind of man Victor DeLuca was, what he was capable of, what kind of darkness she'd stepped into with that reckless kiss. The city gave way to suburbs, which eventually gave way to countryside. They drove through small towns with names Elena vaguely recognized from road trip signs. The November landscape was stark, trees bare of leaves, fields brown and waiting for winter. After about 45 minutes, Sophia turned onto a private road marked only by a discreet stone pillar. The road wound through dense woods for another 10 minutes before opening into a clearing. Elena's breath caught. The house, no, the estate, sprawled across manicured grounds like something from a magazine. Modern architecture blended with classical elements, all stone and glass and clean lines. A fountain dominated the circular drive. Gardens, dormant for winter but clearly elaborate, stretched in all directions. "This is where he lives?" Elena asked. "One of the places," Antonio confirmed. "He has apartments in the city, a house in the mountains, property overseas, but this is his favorite. He comes here when he needs to think." The SUV stopped in front of the main entrance. Antonio opened Elena's door while Sofia remained in the driver's seat, engine running, eyes scanning the perimeter. A woman in her 60s appeared in the doorway, gray hair pulled back in a neat bun, kind face, wearing an apron over comfortable clothes. "Miss Rossi, welcome. I'm Maria, the housekeeper. Please, come in. You must be tired from the drive." Elena let herself be shepherded inside, too overwhelmed to protest. The interior was just as impressive as the exterior. High ceilings, original art on the walls, furniture that managed to look both expensive and comfortable. But it didn't feel cold or sterile. Someone actually lived here. She could see it in the book left open on a side table, the coffee mug on the kitchen counter, the jacket draped over a chair. "Mr. DeLuca called ahead," Maria continued, leading Elena up a curved staircase. "He asked me to give you the blue room. It has a lovely view of the gardens and a private bathroom. I've already prepared fresh towels and linens." The blue room was larger than Elena's entire apartment. A king-size bed dominated one wall, covered in soft linens the color of a summer sky. French doors opened onto a small balcony overlooking the grounds. A sitting area with plush chairs occupied one corner. The attached bathroom featured a clawfoot tub and a shower with enough jets to qualify as a car wash. "This is too much," Elena said faintly. Maria smiled. "Mr. DeLuca wants you to be comfortable. Please, make yourself at home. I'll bring up some tea and something to eat. You must be hungry." Alone in the room, Elena sank onto the bed and tried to process everything. Less than 24 hours ago, she'd been worried about her leaky faucet and whether she could afford new work shoes. Now she was being hidden away in a mansion by a mafia boss who'd kissed her like he was drowning and she was air. Her phone buzzed. Another text from Victor. "You arrived safely?" "Yes." "Your house is—" She paused, unsure how to finish that sentence. "Enormous? Intimidating? Beautiful? Different from your apartment, I imagine." "That's one way to put it. Maria will take care of you. Anything you need, ask her. I'll be there tonight. You don't have to come. I'm fine. I want to." Those 3 words did something to Elena's pulse that she absolutely did not want to examine. She set the phone down without responding and walked to the French doors, stepping out onto the balcony. The view was breathtaking. Gardens stretched toward distant woods, a small lake glittering in the late morning sun. Birds called to each other from the bare trees. It was peaceful in a way Elena hadn't experienced in years. No traffic noise, no sirens, no neighbors shouting through thin walls. Prison or sanctuary? She couldn't decide which this place was. Maria returned with tea and an elaborate lunch spread, sandwiches, fruit, pastries that looked homemade. "Mr. DeLuca mentioned you like to draw," she said, setting everything on a small table. "There's a studio on the 3rd floor if you'd like to work. It gets beautiful light in the afternoons." "He told you I draw?" "He told me everything he thought might make you more comfortable here." Maria's smile was warm but knowing. He's very thorough when he cares about something. After Maria left, Elena picked at the food while her mind spun. This was surreal. All of it. She should be terrified, planning an escape, calling for help. Instead, she was eating gourmet sandwiches and contemplating whether to check out the art studio. The rational part of her brain screamed warnings. The less rational part, the part that had kissed Victor DeLuca in front of 100 witnesses, whispered that maybe, just maybe, she wanted to stay. The afternoon crept by with agonizing slowness. Elena explored the house under Maria's gentle guidance, discovering room after room of carefully curated beauty. The library alone could have kept her occupied for months. Floor-to-ceiling shelves packed with everything from classic literature to contemporary fiction to art books that made her fingers itch to create. The art studio was on the 3rd floor, exactly as Maria had promised. Light flooded through enormous windows, illuminating an easel, a work table covered in supplies, and shelves of paint, brushes, and canvases. Someone had used this space regularly. She could see it in the worn handles of the brushes, the paint-splattered dropcloth, the half-finished canvas turned to face the wall. "Does Victor paint?" she asked Maria, who'd followed her up. Sometimes, when the weight gets too heavy, he comes up here and creates something. Says it helps him remember there's beauty in the world, not just blood. The casual mention of blood should have disturbed Elena more than it did. Instead, she found herself wondering what Victor painted when the darkness became too much. What did a man like him see as beautiful? As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Elena heard the sound of a car approaching. Her heart rate kicked up immediately. She was standing at the window of her room when the familiar black SUV pulled into the circular drive. Victor emerged from the back seat, and even from this distance, Elena could see the tension in his shoulders. He spoke briefly with Antonio, his gestures sharp and controlled. Then he looked up, directly at her window, as if he'd known exactly where to find her. Their eyes met across the distance. Victor's expression was unreadable, but something in his posture shifted, the tension easing fractionally, some invisible weight lifting. He disappeared into the house. Elena's hands trembled as she smoothed her sweater, suddenly self-conscious about her casual clothes, her makeup-free face, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. She'd dressed for comfort this morning, not for seeing him again. The knock on her door came 5 minutes later. She opened it to find Victor filling the doorway, still in his suit from whatever business he'd been conducting. But his tie was loosened, his collar unbuttoned, and there was something in his eyes that looked dangerously close to relief. "You're here," he said simply. "Where else would I be? Your people made it very clear leaving wasn't an option. You could have tried. Some people do." He stepped into the room without waiting for an invitation, closing the door behind him. "The fact that you didn't says something. It says I'm too scared to run." "No." He moved closer, and Elena's back hit the wall without her conscious decision to retreat. "Fear would have made you run anyway. This is something else." "What?" Victor braced one hand against the wall beside her head, leaning in until she could smell the faint scent of smoke clinging to his clothes, see the shadow of exhaustion under his eyes. "Curiosity, maybe even interest. You want to understand this, understand me, even though every rational instinct tells you to run." "You're wrong." "Am I?" His free hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone exactly like he'd done last night. "Then tell me to leave, Elena. Tell me you want nothing to do with me, that last night was a mistake you regret. Tell me, and I'll walk out that door right now." She should say it, should push him away and demand to be taken back to her normal, safe, boring life. Instead, she heard herself whisper, "I can't." "Why not?" "Because I don't know if it would be true." Victor's eyes darkened. "You're playing with fire." "I know. I could hurt you, probably will hurt you, even if I don't mean to." "I know that too." "Then why—" He cut himself off, jaw tightening. "Why are you looking at me like that?" "Like what?" "Like I'm worth saving." The raw vulnerability in his voice cracked something open in Elena's chest. She reached up, her hand covering his where it rested against her face. "Maybe you are." "I'm not. I've done things that would make you sick if you knew. Hurt people, killed people, built an empire on fear and blood and broken bones." "Then why are you trying so hard to protect me?" Victor's laugh was bitter. "Because you're the first thing in 10 years that's felt clean, pure, and I'm selfish enough to want to keep that feeling, even if it means dragging you into the darkness with me. What if I choose to step into it? Don't." His forehead dropped to rest against hers, a gesture of defeat. "Don't choose this, Elena. Don't choose me. You deserve so much more than what I can offer." "What if what you can offer is what I want?" Before he could answer, his phone buzzed. Victor pulled back with a curse, checking the screen. His expression hardened into something cold and lethal. "I have to take this." He stepped away and Elena felt the loss of his warmth like a physical ache. "Stay here. Lock the door. I'll be back." He was gone before she could protest, leaving Elena alone with her racing heart and the ghost of his touch on her skin. She moved to the window, watching as Victor paced the grounds below, phone pressed to his ear. Even from this distance, she could see the rage in his movements, the barely controlled violence in every gesture. He was arguing with someone, his free hand cutting through the air in sharp, angry motions. Then suddenly, he went perfectly still. His hand dropped to his side. He said something short and brutal into the phone, then hung up. For a long moment, he just stood there, head bowed, shoulders rigid. When he finally looked up at her window, his expression made Elena's blood run cold. This was the man from the garden. The man who'd gripped that traitor's throat and watched him be dragged away. The monster wearing a man's face. Victor disappeared back into the house. Elena backed away from the window, suddenly uncertain whether she wanted to see him again tonight or whether she should follow his advice and lock her door. The knock came before she could decide. "It's me," Victor called through the door. "Let me in, Elena." She opened the door slowly. Victor stood in the hallway and the mask had slipped back into place. But she could see the cracks now, the rage simmering beneath the surface. "What happened?" she asked. "Someone thought they could test me. Thought that maybe I'd gone soft, become distracted by a pretty girl at a wedding." He stepped into the room, and this time there was nothing gentle in his movements. This was predatory, dangerous. "They were wrong. Victor. They sent men to your apartment building. While you were here, safe, they were watching your door, planning to grab you the second you came home." Horror washed over Elena in a cold wave. "But I wasn't there." "No, because I moved you here, where they can't reach you, where my men can protect you properly." He gripped her shoulders, not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough to make his point. "Do you understand now? This isn't paranoia, Elena. This is real. People want to hurt you to get to me." "What did you do?" But she already knew, could see it in his eyes, in the blood, barely visible, just a few drops, on his cuff. "What I had to, what I'll keep doing until everyone understands that touching you means death." His hands gentled on her shoulders, sliding down her arms. "Are you afraid of me now?" Elena should lie, should say yes and push him away. Instead, she told the truth. "I'm terrified, but not of you, of this, of what I'm feeling, of the fact that I should be running, and I'm not." "What are you feeling?" "I don't know. It's too soon, too fast, too everything. But when you're not here, I'm waiting for you to come back. When you are here, I can't breathe properly, and when you touch me—" She broke off, shaking her head. "This is insane." "Yes," Victor agreed, "completely insane." "So what do we do?" "I don't know. I've never—" He stopped, choosing his words carefully. "I've had women in my life before. Arrangements, transactions, occasionally something approaching affection. But never this. Never someone who looked at me and saw past the monster to whatever might be underneath." "What is underneath?" Victor pulled her closer, until they were almost but not quite touching. "I'm not sure anymore. I've been playing this role so long I can't tell where the mask ends and the man begins. But when I'm with you, I feel something shifting, something I thought I'd buried years ago." "What?" "Hope. Possibility. The idea that maybe I could be something other than what I've become." His hand slid into her hair, tilting her face up to his. "You're dangerous, Elena Rossi. More dangerous than any enemy I've ever faced." "How?" "Because you make me want things I can't have, a normal life, a clean conscience, a future that doesn't end in blood and betrayal." He leaned down, his lips hovering just above hers. "Tell me to stop. Tell me this is a mistake. Give me one reason to walk away before I drag you so deep into my world that you'll never find your way out." Elena's hands fisted in his jacket, pulling him closer instead of pushing away. "I don't want you to stop. Elena, I don't want you to walk away. I don't want reasons to run. I just want—" She stopped, overwhelmed by the intensity of her own feelings. "I just want to see where this goes, even if it's crazy, even if it's dangerous, even if it destroys me." Victor's control snapped. He kissed her with a hunger that stole her breath, one hand tangled in her hair, the other spanning her waist and pulling her flush against him. Elena kissed him back with equal desperation, tasting anger and need and something that felt dangerously close to devotion. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Victor rested his forehead against hers. "I can't promise you safety. Can't promise you a fairy tale ending. All I can offer is honesty and protection and everything I have, twisted as it is." "Then give me that," Elena whispered. "Give me honesty. Tell me who you really are, Victor. Not the legend or the monster. The man." Victor was quiet for so long that Elena thought he might refuse. Then he took her hand and led her to the sitting area, pulling her down beside him on the couch. He kept hold of her hand like he needed the anchor. I was 22 when I killed my first man, he began, his voice flat and emotionless. He'd murdered my father, taken over our territory, and was systematically destroying everything my family had built. I put 3 bullets in his chest and 1 in his head, and I didn't feel a thing. That's when I knew what I was. What I'd always been, maybe. Elena's fingers tightened around his. She didn't speak, just listened. I built my empire on that foundation. Violence, fear, absolute control. I told myself it was necessary, that I was protecting my people, maintaining order. But the truth? He finally looked at her, and the emptiness in his eyes made her heart ache. The truth is I'm good at it. The violence, the intimidation, the cold calculation it takes to stay on top. Maybe I was born for this. Maybe it's all I'll ever be. I don't believe that. Why not? You barely know me. I know you donated $50,000 to my boss so I wouldn't lose my job. I know you're keeping me safe, even though it would be easier to just walk away. I know you paint in that studio upstairs when the darkness gets too heavy. She shifted closer until her shoulder pressed against his. I know the man who kissed me last night wasn't just a monster. He was someone trying desperately to feel human. Victor's jaw tightened. You see what you want to see. So do you. You see yourself as irredeemable, but maybe you're wrong. And maybe I'm exactly what I think I am, and you're the one who's deluding herself. Then prove it, Elena challenged. Show me the monster. Stop protecting me. Stop trying to keep me safe. Stop looking at me like I'm something precious you're afraid to break. I can't. Why not? Because... He stopped, the words seeming to catch in his throat. When he spoke again, his voice was raw. Because for the first time in a decade, I care about something more than power, more than territory or money or reputation. I care about you, Elena, and that terrifies me more than any enemy ever could. The confession hung between them, stark and vulnerable. Elena felt tears prick her eyes, overwhelmed by the weight of what he was offering her, not pretty words or promises, but honest, terrifying truth. I'm scared too, she admitted. Of this, of you, of what I'm feeling, but I'm also tired of being invisible, of living a safe, small life where nothing ever happens. Maybe that makes me reckless. Maybe it makes me stupid. But for the first time in years, I feel alive. Victor cupped her face in both hands, his thumbs brushing away tears she hadn't realized were falling. I don't want to be the reason you get hurt. Then don't be. Be the reason I survive. Be the reason I learn how to be brave. He kissed her again, slower this time, like he was memorizing the taste of her. When he pulled back, something in his expression had shifted, a decision made, a line crossed. Stay with me tonight, he said quietly. I'm not asking for anything more than your presence. I just want you close. Want to know you're safe. Okay? They stayed on the couch as night fell outside, talking in low voices about everything and nothing. Victor told her about growing up in his father's shadow, about the pressure to be strong and ruthless and perfect. Elena told him about losing her parents, about the loneliness of being the poor relation at family gatherings, about her dreams of opening her own gallery someday. The conversation flowed easier than it should have between two people who'd known each other less than 48 hours. But somehow, in the quiet of that room with darkness pressing against the windows, they found common ground in their shared understanding of isolation. Victor, alone at the top of his brutal empire. Elena, alone in her struggle to matter. Around midnight, Maria knocked softly and brought in food, pasta and wine and bread still warm from the oven. They ate together, and Elena watched Victor's shoulders gradually lose their rigid tension, saw the hard edges of his face soften in the candlelight. This was the man beneath the monster, she thought. This quiet, thoughtful person who asked about her favorite artists and listened to her talk about color theory like it was the most important thing in the world. I could get used to this, she admitted, immediately regretting the vulnerability of the words. But Victor just smiled, a real smile reaching his eyes for the first time since she'd met him. So could I. That's the problem. Later, when exhaustion finally pulled at Elena's consciousness, Victor walked her to the bedroom door. He hesitated there, clearly torn. I should go. Let you sleep. You said you wanted me close. I do, but if I stay... He shook his head. I don't trust myself to be a gentleman. Elena took his hand, pulling him gently into the room. Then don't be. Just be you. They lay down together fully clothed, Elena's back to Victor's chest, his arm wrapped protectively around her waist. It should have been awkward, too intimate too soon. Instead, it felt inevitable, like they'd been building toward this moment since that first glance across a crowded ballroom. Elena? Victor's voice was quiet in the darkness. Hmm? Thank you. For what? For not running. For seeing me as something worth saving, even if I'm not sure I agree. For making me remember what it feels like to want something other than power. Elena's hand found his, their fingers intertwining. Thank you for protecting me. For being honest. For letting me in, even when it scares you. But his arm tightened around her. Sleep. Tomorrow, things get complicated again. Tonight, just sleep. Elena closed her eyes, feeling safer in the arms of a dangerous man than she'd ever felt in her carefully controlled, cautious life. Outside, Victor's guards patrolled the perimeter. In the city, his enemies plotted and schemed. But here, in this moment, there was only warmth and darkness and the steady rhythm of his breathing. She was falling, Elena realized, falling fast and hard for a man who dealt in violence and lived in shadows. It was reckless and foolish and probably doomed. But as sleep finally claimed her, she found she didn't care. Elena woke to sunlight streaming through the French doors and the smell of coffee. For a disoriented moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then memory flooded back. Victor's estate, his arm around her waist through the night, the steady rhythm of his breathing against her neck. She turned over, but the bed beside her was empty, the sheets already cool. He'd left sometime before dawn without waking her. A note sat on the nightstand, written in sharp, precise handwriting. Had to handle some business. Stay inside today. Antonio and Sofia are stationed outside your door. Maria will bring breakfast. I'll be back before dinner. We need to talk about what happens next. V. Elena reread the last line 3 times, anxiety twisting in her stomach. What happens next? That sounded ominous, like a conversation that would require decisions she wasn't ready to make. A soft knock interrupted her spiraling thoughts. Miss Rossi, may I come in? Yes, Maria. The housekeeper entered with a tray laden with coffee, fresh pastries, fruit, and what looked like an omelet still steaming from the pan. She set it on the small table by the window, her expression warm but knowing. Mr. DeLuca left early this morning. He wanted me to make sure you had everything you needed. Thank you. This looks amazing. Elena moved to the table, suddenly ravenous. Maria, can I ask you something? Of course, dear. How long have you worked for Victor? Maria settled into the chair across from her, apparently in no hurry. 15 years, since he was barely more than a boy, really. 25 years old and suddenly responsible for an entire organization after his father died. What was he like then? Angry, grieving, determined to prove himself to men who thought he was too young, too soft. Maria's eyes grew distant with memory. I watched him harden himself into what he needed to be, watched him bury the gentler parts until even he forgot they existed. But they're still there, Elena said quietly. I've seen them. Yes, I think you have. Maria studied her with sharp eyes. He's different with you, softer around the edges, more like the young man he used to be before the world demanded he become something else. That scares him, I think. Of course it does. Softness is dangerous in his world. It's a vulnerability enemies can exploit. Maria reached across and patted Elena's hand. But perhaps that's exactly what he needs. Someone who reminds him he's still human, not just the monster he's had to become. After Maria left, Elena tried to distract herself with sketching, with reading, with exploring the house. But her mind kept circling back to Victor, where he was, what he was doing, whether the business he'd mentioned involved violence. She was standing in the library, running her fingers along leather-bound spines without really seeing them, when Antonio appeared in the doorway. Miss Rossi, there's someone here to see you. Elena's heart jumped. Victor? No, your cousin, Gabriella Martinelli. Well, I suppose she's Gabriella Santoro now. She's at the gate, quite insistent about speaking with you. Fear spiked through Elena's chest. How did she find me here? I don't know. But she's alone, and she's been scanned. No weapons, no recording devices. It's your choice whether you want to see her. Elena's first instinct was to refuse, but Gabriella was family, probably worried sick after Elena had disappeared with a notorious crime boss. She owed her cousin some kind of explanation. Let her in. But Antonio, stay close, please. Always. 10 minutes later, Gabriella swept into the library like a force of nature, still honeymoon glowing despite the anxiety etched across her face. She pulled Elena into a fierce hug. Thank heaven you're all right. When you disappeared like that, and then no one could reach you. Elena, I've been terrified. I'm fine. I'm sorry I worried you. Gabriella pulled back, studying Elena's face with the intensity of someone who'd known her since childhood. Are you fine, really? Because from where I'm standing, you're being held in a mansion by one of the most dangerous men in the city. I'm not being held. I'm being protected. From what? Elena gestured for Gabriella to sit, then sank into the chair beside her. From people who want to hurt me because they saw me with Victor, because that kiss made me important in their eyes, which made me a target. Gabriella's face paled. Oh, Elena, what were you thinking? I wasn't. That's the problem. Elena laughed, but there was no humor in it. I saw him, and something just, I don't know. It was reckless and stupid, and I'm paying for it now. Then come home. Come back to the city with me right now. I'll hide you, help you leave the country if necessary. You don't have to stay in his world. It's not that simple. His enemies already know who I am. Running won't make me invisible again. So what? You're just going to stay here? Become his what exactly? His mistress? His kept woman? The words stung, probably because they hit too close to fears Elena had been trying not to examine. I don't know what I'm going to become. We're figuring it out. Gabriella leaned forward, gripping Elena's hands. Listen to me. I know Victor DeLuca seems exciting, dangerous, maybe even romantic, but my husband's family has dealt with him for years. They're terrified of him, Elena. He's killed people, lots of people. He's not some misunderstood anti-hero from a movie. He's a real criminal who does real, horrible things. I know what he is. Do you? Do you really? Gabriella's voice cracked. Because the Elena I know is careful, cautious. She doesn't throw herself at dangerous men and end up hidden away in estates like some kind of mob princess. Maybe the Elena you knew was tired of being careful, tired of being invisible and safe and utterly forgettable. Forgettable? Elena, you're not. I am. Was. At that wedding, I was just the poor cousin in the cheap dress. Nobody saw me. Nobody noticed me. But Victor did. He looked at me like I mattered, like I was worth protecting, worth... She stopped, unsure how to finish that sentence. Worth dying for? Gabriella asked quietly. Because that's what could happen. You could die, Elena. People in his world die all the time. People in every world die, Gabriella. At least in his world, I'm alive. Really alive, for the first time in years. Her cousin sat back, shaking her head in disbelief. You're in love with him. Oh, Elena, you're actually falling in love with him. Don't be ridiculous. I barely know him. That's not what your face says when you talk about him. Before Elena could respond, Antonio appeared in the doorway, his expression tense. Miss Rossi, I'm sorry, but you need to come with me, now. What's wrong? Mr. DeLuca called. There's been an incident. He's on his way back, but he wants you somewhere more secure until he arrives. Gabriella stood, alarm flashing across her face. What kind of incident? Antonio ignored her, his attention solely on Elena. Please, Miss Rossi, we need to move. Elena's heart hammered as she stood. Gabriella, you should go, right now. I'm not leaving you. You have to. Antonio, please make sure she gets out safely. Elena, go. Elena grabbed her cousin's shoulders, forcing eye contact. Go back to your husband, your honeymoon, your normal life. Forget about me. Forget you were here. Sophia appeared beside Antonio, her expression grim. There are 3 vehicles approaching from the South Access Road. They're not ours. Antonio swore in Italian. Basement, now. He grabbed Elena's arm and pulled her toward a door she'd never noticed, concealed in the wood paneling. Sophia had Gabriella by the other arm, both women propelling them down a narrow staircase into darkness. "What's happening?" Gabriella demanded, her voice high with fear. "Someone found you," Sophia said flatly. "Which means they probably followed you here, Mrs. Santoro. They used you to get to Elena." The basement was vast and cold, filled with storage and what looked like an armory. Antonio pushed Elena toward a reinforced door in the far wall while Sophia dragged Gabriella in the opposite direction. "Wait, where are you taking her?" Elena tried to pull free from Antonio's grip. "Separate locations. If they breach the house, they can't get both of you." Antonio yanked open the reinforced door, revealing a small safe room beyond. "Get inside. Lock it from the inside. Don't open it for anyone except Mr. DeLuca or me." "I can't just hide while—" "Yes, you can. That's exactly what you're going to do." He pushed her inside, his eyes hard. "Mr. DeLuca would burn this entire city to the ground if something happened to you. Don't make me explain to him that I let you play hero." The door slammed shut. Elena heard the lock engage from the outside, followed by Antonio's footsteps retreating rapidly. Then silence. The safe room was small, maybe 8 by 8 feet, with concrete walls, a single LED light panel, and a bench built into one wall. A phone sat on the bench, its cord trailing to some kind of dedicated line. Elena's hands shook as she picked up the phone. No dial tone, just a blinking red light. Then it rang, the sound sharp and jarring in the confined space. She grabbed it. "Hello? Elena." Victor's voice was taut with barely controlled fury. "Are you secure?" "Yes. Antonio locked me in some kind of safe room. Victor, what's happening?" The Rossetti family decided to make a move. They knew about the estate, waited for the right moment. She heard him bark orders to someone in the background, then his attention snapped back to her. "Your cousin led them right to you. They followed her from the city." "She didn't know. She was just worried about me." "Her intentions don't matter. The result is the same." A pause, then his voice dropped to something dark and lethal. "Stay in that room, Elena. No matter what you hear, what you think is happening, you stay locked in until I come for you. Do you understand?" "Victor, I'm scared." "I know. I'm 10 minutes out. My men are already engaging the Rossettis. This will be over soon." "And then what?" "Then I make sure they never threaten you again." The line went dead. Elena sat on the bench, hugging her knees to her chest, and tried not to imagine what was happening above her. But her mind filled in the blanks anyway. Gunfire, violence, men dying because she'd been reckless enough to kiss a mafia boss at a wedding. The minutes crawled by with agonizing slowness. Elena counted her heartbeats, her breaths, anything to measure time in the timeless room. She thought of Gabriella, prayed her cousin was safe in whatever hiding place Sophia had found. Thought of Victor, racing toward danger instead of away from it. Thought of how drastically her life had changed in just 3 days. Then she heard it. Muffled but unmistakable. Gunfire. Pop, 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 in rapid succession, followed by shouts and what sounded like breaking glass. Elena's hands flew to her mouth, stifling a scream. The sounds continued. More gunfire, closer now, an explosion that shook dust from the concrete ceiling. She backed into the corner, making herself as small as possible, and squeezed her eyes shut. This was real. This was actually happening. People were dying upstairs, killing and being killed, all because of her. The gunfire intensified, then gradually faded. Silence returned, somehow more terrifying than the noise had been. Elena strained her ears, trying to hear something, anything that would tell her what was happening. Footsteps on the stairs, heavy, purposeful. Multiple people. Elena's breath caught in her throat. Were they Victor's men? Or had the Rossettis broken through? Someone tried the safe room door. Once, twice. Then a voice, Antonio's, she thought, called out, "Miss Rossi, it's over. Mr. DeLuca is here." Elena didn't move. Victor had told her not to open the door for anyone except him or Antonio. But what if they'd captured Antonio, forced him to speak? "Elena," Victor's voice now, rough and strained. "Open the door. It's safe." Her hand shook as she approached the lock. "How do I know it's really you?" "Because I'm the monster who's become addicted to the way you look at me like I'm worth saving. Because you taste like champagne and courage. Because last night you fell asleep in my arms and I've never felt anything close to that peace before. A pause. Because I'm asking, not demanding. If you don't feel safe opening this door, don't. I'll wait as long as you need. Elena unlocked the door with trembling fingers and pulled it open. Victor stood on the other side, still in the suit he'd been wearing this morning, but now there was blood splattered across his white shirt, a cut above his eyebrow, and something wild and dangerous in his eyes. Antonio stood behind him, equally disheveled, holding a gun with casual familiarity. "Are you hurt?" Victor asked, his eyes scanning her from head to toe. "No, I'm fine. Gabriella is safe." Sophia got her out through the north tunnel. She's already on her way back to the city with 2 of my best men escorting her. Relief flooded through Elena's system, nearly buckling her knees. Victor caught her before she could fall, pulling her against his chest despite the blood staining his clothes. "It's over," he murmured into her hair. "They're all dead. Every single one who came here. You killed them." "Yes." No apology in his voice, no regret, just flat statement of fact. Elena pulled back to look at his face. "How many? Does it matter?" "Yes." Victor's jaw tightened. 12. 12 men came to my home intending to take you, hurt you, use you against me. 12 men who will never threaten anyone again. She should be horrified, should recoil from the casual admission of mass murder. Instead, she found herself asking, "Are you hurt?" Something flickered in his eyes, surprise, maybe, or relief that she wasn't running. "Nothing serious. A few cuts, some bruises. I've had worse." Antonio cleared his throat. "Boss, we should get her out of here. The cleanup crew is already working, but this isn't something she should see." "Agreed." Victor kept one arm around Elena as he guided her toward the stairs. "Close your eyes. Don't look at anything until I tell you to." Elena obeyed, letting him lead her blind through the basement and up the stairs. Even with her eyes closed, she could smell it. Gunpowder, blood, something sharp and chemical. Could hear the low murmur of voices, the sound of heavy objects being moved. "Keep them closed," Victor warned as they moved through what she thought was the main floor. "Almost there." Finally, he stopped. "Okay, you can look now." They were in his bedroom. She'd never been in here before, all dark wood and masculine simplicity. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the grounds, though the curtains were currently drawn. A king-size bed dominated one wall, and through an open door she could see a bathroom with a massive shower. "Sit," Victor said, guiding her to the bed. "I need to clean up. Will you be all right alone for a few minutes?" Elena nodded, not trusting her voice. Victor studied her face for a long moment, then disappeared into the bathroom. She heard water running, his quiet curse as he apparently touched something that hurt. She sat on the edge of his bed, hands folded in her lap, and tried to process everything. 12 men dead, gunfire in the house, her cousin used as an unwitting tracking device, and Victor, covered in blood, asking if she was all right like her well-being was the only thing that mattered. When he emerged from the bathroom 15 minutes later, he'd showered and changed into clean clothes, black slacks and a dark gray sweater that made his eyes look almost black. The cut above his eyebrow had been cleaned and covered with a small bandage. He moved with his usual controlled grace, but Elena could see the tension in his shoulders, the barely leashed violence still simmering beneath the surface. "Talk to me," he said, sitting beside her but not touching. "Tell me what you're thinking." "I don't know what I'm thinking. Elena stopped, searching for words. "I'm terrified and relieved and horrified and grateful all at the same time. Does that make sense?" "Perfect sense. 12 people are dead because of me." "No." Victor's voice was hard, sharp. 12 people are dead because they chose to attack my home, threaten someone under my protection, and test whether I'd gone soft. They knew the risks. They made their choice. But if I hadn't kissed you, then they would have found some other excuse, some other weakness to exploit. That's what men like the Rossettis do. They probe for vulnerabilities and attack when they think they've found one. Elena turned to face him fully. "And I'm your vulnerability now." "Yes." "Doesn't that make you angry? Resentful?" Victor reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear with surprising gentleness. "I should be. I should hate that you've become this weakness in my armor. But I don't. Because you're also the first thing in 10 years that's made me feel human instead of just functional. What does that mean for us? For whatever this is? I don't know. That's the conversation we need to have. He stood, pacing to the window and pulling back the curtain slightly to look out at the grounds. The Rossettis were a warning, Elena. Other families are watching, weighing whether you're truly important to me or just a passing interest. Today's attack will send a message, but it won't end the threats. So, what are my options? Victor turned back to face her, his expression grave. Option 1. I put you on a plane to somewhere far away. New identity, new life, enough money to live comfortably. You disappear and eventually people forget about you. You're safe, but we never see each other again. The thought made Elena's chest constrict painfully. And option 2? You stay with me, publicly, completely, no more hiding. You become part of my world in a way that makes it clear attacking you means declaring war on my entire organization. It's dangerous, and it means accepting that your life will never be normal again. But I can protect you. Will protect you with everything I have. Is there an option 3? No. Those are the only choices that keep you alive. Elena stood, moving to stand in front of him. And what do you want? Victor's laugh was harsh. What I want is irrelevant. I want to keep you safe and keep you with me, 2 things that are fundamentally incompatible in my world. Then make them compatible. Find a way. Elena, you said yourself you're good at what you do, at maintaining control, building empires, making impossible things happen. She placed her hands on his chest, feeling his heart hammering beneath her palms. So make this possible. Make us possible. You're asking me to risk your life. I'm asking you to let me choose. Let me decide what I'm willing to risk. Victor's hands came up to grip her wrists, his touch almost desperate. You don't understand what you're choosing. The constant danger, the scrutiny, the fact that every person who speaks to you could be an enemy in disguise. You'd have to be careful every second of every day. One mistake, one moment of letting your guard down, and you'd move heaven and earth to protect me. I know. I've seen it. Elena rose on her toes, bringing her face close to his. I'm not asking for guarantees, Victor. I'm asking for a chance, for us to try. Why? Because for the first time in my life, I feel like I matter, like I'm not just Elena Rossi, the invisible girl who manages a gallery and eats cereal for dinner. With you, I'm someone worth protecting, worth killing for, apparently. She smiled without humor. Maybe that's messed up. Maybe I should want normal and safe. But I don't. I want this. I want you. Victor's control cracked. He kissed her with bruising intensity, one hand fisting in her hair, the other pulling her flesh against him. Elena kissed him back just as fiercely, pouring every confused emotion of the past few days into the connection between them. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Victor rested his forehead against hers. If we do this, there's no going back. You understand that? Once you're publicly mine, leaving becomes impossible. Too many people will know your face, know your connection to me. I understand. And you're choosing this anyway? Choosing me, despite everything you know I am? Yes. Victor pulled back to study her face, searching for doubt or hesitation. Whatever he saw there must have satisfied him, because he nodded slowly. Then we do this right. Tomorrow, I'm taking you back to the city. We're going to be seen together, at restaurants, events, everywhere that matters. I'm going to make it abundantly clear that you're under my protection and that anyone who touches you signs their own death warrant. And tonight? Tonight you stay here, with me, safe. His hand cupped her face, thumb brushing across her cheekbone. I need to know you're close, that you're real. Today, when I thought they might have gotten to you, he stopped, jaw clenching. I've never been that afraid before. Not when my father died. Not when I took over the organization. Never. I'm here, Elena whispered. I'm safe. You made sure of that. They spent the rest of the evening in his room, talking quietly while the cleanup continued somewhere below them. Victor told her more about his world, the alliances he'd built, the enemies he'd made, the delicate balance of power that kept the city from descending into outright war. Elena listened, asking questions, trying to understand the dangerous waters she was about to dive into. As night fell, Maria brought food, her expression carefully neutral when she found them curled together on the couch. After she left, Victor fed Elena bites of pasta and sips of wine, the domestic intimacy of it almost jarring against the backdrop of the day's violence. "I should let you sleep," Victor said eventually, though he made no move to leave. "Stay with me, like last night." "Elena, after everything that happened today, I'm not sure I trust myself to just sleep beside you." She met his eyes steadily. "Then don't just sleep. I'm not asking you to be a gentleman, Victor. I'm asking you to be human, to feel something other than violence and control. With me." "You're sure?" Instead of answering with words, Elena pulled him down into another kiss. This one was slower, deeper, full of intention and promise. Victor responded with a hunger that had been building since that first reckless kiss at the wedding, his hands mapping the curves of her body like he was memorizing every detail. They undressed each other with trembling hands and racing hearts, and when Victor finally pulled her beneath him, his eyes were dark with desire and something that looked dangerously close to devotion. "You're mine now," he whispered against her lips. "I won't let you go. Can't let you go." "I know," Elena breathed, arching into his touch. "I'm choosing this. Choosing you. All of you." What followed was fierce and consuming, acclaiming on both sides. Elena had never felt anything like it. The intensity of connection, the way Victor looked at her like she was the only real thing in his entire violent world. When they finally collapsed together, tangled and breathless, she felt fundamentally changed. "No regrets?" Victor asked quietly, his fingers trailing patterns on her bare shoulder. "Not one." He pulled her closer, tucking her head beneath his chin. "Stay with me. Not just tonight. Always." Elena's heart stuttered. "Victor, I know it's fast, I know it's insane, but I've spent 10 years building an empire and none of it means anything compared to this. To you." He tilted her face up to his. "Stay with me. Let me protect you, cherish you, give you everything I have. Let me try to be the man you see when you look at me instead of just the monster I've become." Tears burned Elena's eyes. "Yes. Yes? Yes, I'll stay. Yes to all of it. Yes to choosing this impossible, dangerous, beautiful thing we're building together." Victor kissed her again, slower this time, tender in a way she hadn't known he was capable of. When he finally released her, his smile was small but genuine. "Tomorrow, everything changes," he said. "I know. Are you ready for that?" Elena thought about her small apartment, her quiet job, her invisible life. Thought about the woman she'd been just 3 days ago, before a reckless kiss had rewritten her entire existence. "I'm terrified," she admitted, "but I'm also more alive than I've ever been. So yes, I'm ready." Outside the windows, the stars emerged one by one in the dark sky. Inside, wrapped in Victor's arms, Elena felt safer than she'd ever felt despite knowing the danger that waited beyond these walls. She'd made her choice, crossed her own invisible line. Tomorrow, she would step fully into Victor's world. Tonight, she let herself simply feel the warmth of his body, the steady beat of his heart, the promise of something worth fighting for, worth surviving for, worth believing in, despite the darkness pressing in from all sides. The next morning arrived with deceptive calm. Elena woke wrapped in Egyptian cotton sheets that cost more than her monthly rent, sunlight streaming through windows that overlooked grounds where men had died less than 24 hours ago. Victor was already awake, sitting in a chair by the window with his phone, speaking in rapid Italian that sounded more like commands than conversation. He noticed her stirring and ended the call abruptly. "Good morning." "Is it?" Elena sat up, pulling the sheet around herself. "A good morning, I mean." "That depends on your perspective. You're sorry. The Rossetti family's leadership is currently deciding whether to retaliate or accept yesterday's outcome as the cost of testing me." He stood, moving to sit on the edge of the bed. "But for us, yes, it's a good morning because you're alive and here." Elena reached for his hand. "When do we leave for the city?" 2 hours. "I've already sent people to your apartment to pack your things. You won't be going back there." The casual way he said it should have bothered her more than it did. "Where will I be going?" "You'll stay with me. I have a penthouse downtown. It's secure, heavily guarded. You'll be safe there." He paused, studying her face. Unless you want your own place. I can arrange something nearby, protection included. No. The answer came quickly, surprising even herself. I want to be with you. Something in Victor's expression softened. You say that now. Wait until you've dealt with my habits for a week. I'm not easy to live with. Neither am I. I sing in the shower, leave art supplies everywhere, and I'm terrible at mornings. I've noticed the morning thing. His thumb brushed across her knuckles. Elena, before we go back to the city, I need you to understand what's going to happen today. We're going to be seen, deliberately, publicly. I'm taking you to Carmine's for lunch, then to a gallery opening tonight. Both places will be full of people who matter in my world. You're making a statement. I'm making a promise. To you and to everyone watching, that you're mine to protect, and anyone who forgets that will face consequences. The possessiveness in his voice should have set off alarm bells. Instead, it sent heat pooling low in Elena's stomach. And what am I supposed to do at these events? Be yourself. Be the woman who was brave enough to kiss me in front of 100 witnesses. Let them see that you're not afraid, that you chose this. He leaned closer. And stay close to me. Antonio and Sofia will be there, along with 6 other security personnel, but I still want you within arm's reach. What if I need to use the bathroom? Victor's lips quirked into an almost smile. Then Sofia goes with you. I know it sounds extreme, but until certain messages have been received and understood, we can't be too careful. After breakfast, Elena found that Victor's people had indeed packed her apartment. Her clothes now hung in his massive closet, her toiletries arranged in the bathroom, even her sketchbooks and art supplies carefully organized on shelves in a room he'd apparently designated as her studio. The efficiency was both impressive and slightly terrifying. How many people went through my things, she asked, standing in the doorway of her new studio. Victor appeared behind her. 3. All women on my staff, all discreet. They were instructed to treat everything with care. He pointed to a locked cabinet. Anything personal, documents, photos, journals, was placed in there. Only you have the key. The gesture touched her more than it probably should have. He'd invaded her privacy out of necessity, but he'd also tried to preserve some boundaries within that invasion. Thank you. I'm trying, Elena, to balance keeping you safe with letting you keep pieces of yourself. He handed her a small key. I won't always get it right. When I don't, tell me. The drive back to the city was tense despite the luxury of Victor's SUV. Elena watched the landscape change from rural to suburban to urban, feeling like she was traveling toward her own execution. Victor worked beside her, fingers flying across his phone screen, occasionally speaking in clipped Italian to Antonio in the front seat. Nervous? He asked without looking up. Terrified. Good. Fear keeps you alert. He finally set the phone aside and took her hand. But remember, everyone who sees us today is more afraid of me than you could ever be of them. Use that. Carmine's was a restaurant Elena had read about but never imagined entering. The kind of place where reservations required 6 months' notice and a last name that meant something. Victor's arrival brought the entire staff to attention. The owner himself appeared to escort them to a private table in the back, positioned where Victor could see every entrance. Mr. DeLuca, welcome back, and this must be Miss Rossi. The owner's smile was warm, but his eyes were calculating, already cataloging every detail about her to report to whoever asked. Your usual table, of course. They sat, and Elena felt the weight of dozens of eyes on them. Conversations had quieted when they entered, resuming now in hushed, curious tones. She recognized a few faces from Gabriella's wedding, others from news articles about the city's business elite. Everyone's staring, she murmured. Let them. That's the point. Victor's hand covered hers on the table, a deliberate display of intimacy. Order whatever you want. Take your time. We're here to be seen, not to rush. Elena ordered pasta she barely tasted, hyper-aware of every glance, every whispered conversation. Halfway through the meal, a man approached their table. Older, silver-haired, expensive suit. Victor, good to see you. Victor's expression remained neutral, but Elena felt his hand tighten fractionally on hers. Marco. I'd say the same, but we both know I'd be lying. The man, Marco, laughed, but his eyes were cold. Always direct. I appreciate that about you. His gaze shifted to Elena. And this must be the young woman who's caused such a stir. Elena Rossi, isn't it? It is. Elena forced herself to meet his eyes steadily, remembering Victor's advice about fear. Charming. Absolutely charming. Marco turned back to Victor. I heard about the incident at your estate. Unfortunate business. The Rossettis were always impulsive. The Rossettis are dead. All of them who matter, anyway. So I heard. A strong message, though some might call it an overreaction. Victor's smile was sharp and utterly without warmth. Some might. Those people would be wrong. The message was exactly as strong as it needed to be. Marco's jovial facade cracked slightly. Of course. Well, I won't interrupt your meal further. Miss Rossi, a pleasure to meet you. I'm sure we'll be seeing more of each other. After he left, Elena released a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Who was that? Marco Constantino. He runs the dock workers union and controls most of the smuggling operations through the port. He's testing whether your presence makes me weak or more dangerous. Victor lifted her hand and kissed her knuckles, a gesture clearly meant for the watching crowd. He just got his answer. The rest of lunch passed in a blur of subtle power plays and careful observation. Several other people stopped by the table, some to pay respects, others to assess, all to gather information about Elena's role in Victor's life. By the time they left, Elena felt emotionally exhausted. You did well, Victor said as they settled back into the SUV. You didn't flinch, didn't hide behind me. Several people now believe you're stronger than you look. I don't feel strong. I feel terrified and way out of my depth. That's because you're smart enough to understand the situation. The truly dangerous people are the ones who underestimate what they've stepped into. He pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her temple. We have 3 hours before the gallery opening. I need to handle some business. Sophia will stay with you at the penthouse. The penthouse occupied the entire top floor of a building in the financial district. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of the city. The decor was masculine and modern, leather, steel, dark woods, but somehow managed to feel lived in rather than sterile. Elena could see Victor's presence in the books stacked on tables, the expensive espresso machine clearly used daily, the art on the walls chosen for personal taste rather than investment value. Make yourself comfortable, Sophia said, taking up a position by the elevator. If you need anything, just ask. Elena wandered through the space, trying to reconcile this home with her cramped studio apartment. Her entire previous life could have fit in Victor's living room with space to spare. She found herself in his bedroom, their bedroom now, she supposed, and sank onto the bed. What was she doing? 3 days ago, she'd been invisible. Now she was living in a penthouse, attending gallery openings, with a crime boss, being stared at by dangerous men who were trying to decide if she was a weakness or a weapon. Her phone buzzed. A text from Gabriella. Are you okay? I've been so worried. My husband says you're with Victor DeLuca permanently now. Please tell me you know what you're doing. Elena stared at the message for a long time before responding. I'm okay. I'm safe. And no, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm doing it anyway. I'm sorry you got pulled into this. I'm just glad you're alive. But Elena, be careful. Please. I can't lose you. You won't. Victor won't let that happen. She set the phone aside and lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. Was she being brave or foolish? Choosing life or choosing death? She didn't have answers, only the certainty that going back to who she'd been before was impossible now. Victor returned 2 hours later, finding her in the studio he'd set up for her, sketching without really seeing what her hands created. Everything all right? He asked from the doorway. I don't know, is it? He came to stand behind her, looking at the sketch, a tangle of dark lines and shadows that looked chaotic and desperate. What are you feeling right now? Overwhelmed. Scared. Like I'm standing on the edge of a cliff and I'm not sure if I'm about to fly or fall. Victor's hands came to rest on her shoulders, thumbs pressing into the tension there. If you fall, I'll catch you. And if you're not there, I'll always be there. That's the promise I'm making you, Elena. No matter what happens, no matter what threats emerge, I will keep you safe, even if it costs me everything. She turned to face him, searching his eyes for doubt or deception. Found only fierce conviction. Why? Why are you willing to risk so much for me? Because you make me remember what I was before I became this. Before violence and power were the only languages I spoke. You make me want to be better, even though I'm not sure I know how anymore. He cupped her face in both hands. Because when I'm with you, I feel human. And I'd forgotten how much I needed that. Elena stood, wrapping her arms around his waist and pressing her face against his chest. His heart beat steady and strong beneath her ear, an anchor in the chaos. I'm choosing you, she whispered. Every day, every moment, I'm choosing this. Choosing us, even when I'm terrified. Especially when you're terrified. That's when it matters most. The gallery opening that evening was in a renovated warehouse in the Arts District, Elena's territory, ironically. She'd been to dozens of these events in her professional capacity, always as the invisible gallery manager who smiled and served wine and made sure the artists felt appreciated. Tonight she walked in on Victor's arm, wearing a dress that cost more than she used to make in a month, and every head turned. The whispers started immediately. Elena caught fragments as they moved through the crowd. That's her. The one from the Martinelli wedding. Brave or stupid, I can't decide which. Victor DeLuca's woman, apparently. Poor thing won't last 6 months. Ignore them, Victor murmured, his hand possessive at the small of her back. They don't matter. But they did matter, Elena realized. Every person here was evaluating her, judging her worthiness to stand beside Victor. Some looked at her with pity, others with envy, still others with the cold calculation of people trying to determine how to use this new information to their advantage. Victor, I didn't expect to see you here. A woman approached, stunning, mid-30s, wearing confidence like armor. Art openings aren't usually your scene. Elena wanted to come. Elena, this is Victoria Marchese. She owns the gallery. Victor's tone was polite but distant. Victoria, Elena Rossi. Ah, yes, the famous Elena. Victoria's smile didn't reach her eyes. I've heard so much about you. The whole city has, actually. You've caused quite the sensation. I didn't mean to cause anything, Elena said quietly. No, I'm sure you didn't. These things just happen, don't they? A kiss at a wedding, and suddenly your entire life is upended. Victoria turned to Victor. Is this wise? Bringing her into public so soon after the Rossetti incident? There are people here tonight who might see it as an opportunity. Then those people would be making a fatal mistake. Victor's voice was pleasant, but the threat underneath was unmistakable. Everyone in this room has been thoroughly vetted. My security team has been here for 3 hours. If anyone tries anything, they won't leave alive. Victoria's smile faltered. Always so dramatic. Well, enjoy the art. Elena, if you ever need advice on navigating this world, do reach out. We girls need to stick together. After she left, Elena turned to Victor. She doesn't like me. She doesn't like anyone. Victoria and I had an arrangement once, purely business, mutually beneficial. She's displeased that I've found something more substantial elsewhere. An arrangement? She provided social cover at events. I provided investment in her gallery. Nothing more. He tilted her chin up with one finger. You're the first woman I've actually cared about in over a decade, Elena. The first one who wasn't just a transaction or a convenience. That makes some people uncomfortable. They moved through the gallery, and Elena found herself actually enjoying the art despite the undercurrent of danger. Victor asked thoughtful questions about technique and composition, revealing a knowledge of art she hadn't expected. You really do paint, she said, stopping in front of an abstract piece that reminded her of the half-finished canvas in his estate studio. When I can't sleep, when the weight of everything gets too heavy, art is the only thing that quiets my mind. He studied the painting. What do you see when you look at this? Chaos trying to become order. Violence trying to become beauty. Someone fighting desperately against their own nature. Victor was quiet for a long moment. You see too much. Maybe, or maybe I just see you. They were standing in front of a particularly striking piece, all crimson and black, aggressive brushstrokes suggesting rage barely contained, when Elena's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and felt ice crystallize in her veins. Unknown number, a photo attachment. She opened it before thinking better of it and immediately wished she hadn't. It was a picture of her from earlier that day, leaving Carmine's with Victor. But someone had drawn crosshairs over her face in red, and the caption made her stomach drop. Beautiful girls die young when they make poor choices. Such a shame. Victor was watching her face. What is it? Elena showed him the phone with shaking hands. His expression went absolutely cold, that mask of civilized humanity dropping away to reveal the monster underneath. Antonio, he said quietly into his phone, which had appeared in his hand instantly. We have a threat. Active, immediate. Lock down the gallery. No one leaves until we identify the source. Within seconds, the atmosphere in the gallery changed. Men in suits materialized from nowhere, blocking exits. Conversations died as people realized something was wrong. Victoria Marchese appeared at Victor's side, her face pale. What's happening? Victor, you can't just... Someone in this room just threatened Elena's life. So yes, I can and I am. He turned to address the entire gallery, his voice carrying effortlessly. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the inconvenience, but no one will be leaving for the next few minutes. My security team needs to conduct a brief check. Panic rippled through the crowd. Elena felt it pressing in from all sides. Fear, anger, desperation. Victor kept one arm around her, pulling her close to his side while his men moved through the room with efficient brutality. This is insane, someone shouted. You can't hold us here. I can do whatever I want, Victor replied calmly. And I will, until I ensure Elena's safety. Please make this easier on everyone by cooperating. Elena watched in horrified fascination as Antonio and the others checked phones, examined faces, questioned guests. This was Victor's world in its rawest form, power wielded without apology, fear used as a tool, violence always just beneath the surface. Found him, Sophia called from across the room. She had a young man by the arm, mid-20s, expensive clothes, terror written across his face. His phone shows he sent the message 3 minutes ago. Victor's hand left Elena's waist. He crossed to the young man with predatory grace, and Elena saw several people actually back away, creating a circle of space around what was about to happen. What's your name? Victor asked, his voice deceptively calm. Thomas. Thomas Ricci. Ricci. Any relation to the Ricci family from the north side? My uncle. But I didn't mean... You didn't mean to send a death threat to my woman? Victor tilted his head, studying the terrified young man like an interesting specimen. Then perhaps you'd like to explain what you did mean. It was just supposed to be a joke, a test. My uncle said... Thomas cut himself off, realizing his mistake. Your uncle said what exactly? Elena could see Thomas weighing his options, none of them good. Finally, he whispered, He said you'd gone soft, that you'd lost your edge over some random girl. He wanted me to prove it. The silence in the gallery was absolute. Elena could hear her own heartbeat, could feel the barely leashed violence radiating from Victor's body. Sophia, Victor said quietly, take Elena to the car. No. Elena's voice surprised even herself. I'm staying. Victor turned to look at her, and the expression on his face made her breath catch. Elena, you don't want to see this. Maybe not, but I need to. If I'm going to be part of your world, I need to understand what that means, all of it. Something flickered in his eyes, pride maybe, or grief that she had to see this side of him. He nodded slowly, then turned back to Thomas. Your uncle made a serious miscalculation, and you, in your stupidity, became the instrument of his test. Victor's hand shot out, gripping Thomas's throat. Not hard enough to choke, but enough to terrify. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to call your uncle right now. You're going to tell him that his test failed, that threatening Elena Rossi doesn't make me weak. It makes me lethal. Can you do that? Thomas nodded frantically. Victor released him, and Antonio handed him his phone. The call was brief, Thomas's voice shaking as he delivered Victor's message. When he hung up, Victor spoke again. Now you're going to leave this gallery, get in the car my men are going to provide, and deliver yourself to your uncle's doorstep. You're going to tell him, face to face, that if he ever tests me again through you or anyone else, I will dismantle his entire organization brick by brick and leave him alive long enough to watch. Yes, I'll tell him. Good. And Thomas? If I ever see you again, if you ever come within 100 yards of Elena, if you so much as think her name too loudly, I will kill you, slowly. Do you understand?" "I understand." Antonio escorted Thomas out, and gradually the gallery returned to something approaching normal. Guests were allowed to leave, though Elena noticed several lingering to speak with Victor, some to express support, others clearly recalculating their positions in light of what they'd witnessed. Elena stood frozen, processing what she'd just seen. Victor had threatened to kill a young man with the same casual tone most people use to discuss the weather. And she'd stood there and watched, and the most disturbing part was that she wasn't sure she felt horrified. Mostly, she felt safe. Victor returned to her side, searching her face. "Are you all right?" "I don't know. Should I be all right after watching you threaten someone's life?" "No. You should be horrified, disgusted, running for the nearest exit." He cupped her face gently, the contrast between this tenderness and the violence he'd just displayed almost jarring. "Are you? Any of those things?" Elena thought about lying. Thought about being the woman she'd been a week ago, who would have been appalled. Instead, she told the truth. "I'm relieved, because now whoever sent that message knows you meant what you said about protecting me, and maybe that means fewer people will try." "Maybe." Victor's thumb brushed across her cheekbone. "Or maybe it means they'll try harder, find more creative ways to test me. This isn't over, Elena. Tonight was just another message in an ongoing conversation. Then we keep sending messages until they understand." Something in Victor's expression shifted, admiration mixed with concern. "You're adapting to this world faster than you should. That worries me." "Why?" "Because I wanted you to stay clean, stay separate from the darkness. But you're wading into it willingly, and I'm not sure if that's strength or if I'm corrupting something pure." Elena took his hand, pressing it against her chest where her heart hammered. "Feel that? I'm terrified. Every moment of every day since I kissed you, I've been scared. But I'm also alive in a way I've never been before. Maybe that's corruption. Or maybe it's just finally becoming who I was always meant to be." "And who's that?" "Someone brave enough to love a monster, someone strong enough to stand in the darkness without losing herself, someone who chooses danger over safety because the person standing in that danger is worth it." Victor pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "I don't deserve you. Probably not. But you have me anyway." They left the gallery shortly after, surrounded by security, hyper-aware of every shadow and potential threat. The drive back to the penthouse was silent, both of them lost in their own thoughts. Elena kept seeing Thomas's terrified face, hearing Victor's cold threat, feeling the weight of understanding that this was her life now. Back at the penthouse, Victor poured them both whiskey and stood by the windows, looking out at the glittering city below. "My people are tracking down everyone connected to Thomas Ricci's uncle. By morning, we'll know the full extent of his organization and his plans. Then I'll decide how to respond." "How do you usually respond to something like this?" "Overwhelming force. I make an example brutal enough that no one else gets similar ideas." He turned to face her. "Does that disgust you?" "It should. But I keep thinking about that photo, those crosshairs over my face. Someone out there wants me dead, Victor. And the only thing standing between me and that is you and your willingness to be more brutal than they are." "So you're accepting this? All of it?" Elena set down her whiskey and crossed to him, taking his face in both hands. "I accepted it the moment I kissed you at that wedding. Everything since then has just been understanding the full cost of that choice. And yes, it's terrifying. Yes, I'm in over my head. But I'm not running. I'm staying. With you. In this. Whatever comes next." Victor's control cracked. He kissed her with desperate hunger, his hands tangling in her hair, and Elena kissed him back with equal fervor. They stumbled toward the bedroom, shedding clothes and inhibitions, seeking connection and reassurance in the most primal way possible. Later, wrapped in tangled sheets with Victor's heartbeat steady beneath her ear, Elena finally let herself feel the full weight of the day. The stares, the threats, the violence barely leashed. The understanding that this was her reality now. Not some temporary insanity, but actual permanent life. "I love you," she whispered into the darkness, not sure if she meant to say it out loud. Victor went still beneath her. "Say that again." "I love you." I know it's crazy and too fast and probably the stupidest thing I could feel, but I do. I love you, Victor DeLuca, monster and man and everything in between. He shifted, rolling her beneath him, his eyes searching hers in the dim light from the city outside. I love you too. Have since the moment you looked at me across that ballroom and saw something worth approaching instead of fearing. You terrify me, Elena Rossi, because you've become the one thing in this world I can't afford to lose. Then don't lose me. Protect me. Keep me safe. Keep us safe. I will. I swear it. Whatever it takes, whatever I have to do, I will keep you alive and beside me. They made love again, slower this time, a promise sealed in touch and breath and whispered words. And when sleep finally claimed them both, Elena felt something settle in her chest that felt almost like peace. Tomorrow would bring new threats, new challenges, new tests of their impossible relationship. But tonight, in the darkness of Victor's penthouse with his arms around her, Elena let herself believe that love might be enough, that choosing each other again and again might actually be worth the cost, that together they could survive anything the world threw at them, even if that belief was as reckless as the kiss that had started everything. The peace Elena felt that night shattered at 4 a.m. when Victor's phone erupted with calls. She woke to find him already out of bed, pacing by the windows in nothing but sleep pants, his voice hard and clipped as he spoke in rapid Italian. "What's wrong?" she asked, sitting up. Victor held up one finger, finishing his conversation before turning to her. His expression was grim. The Ricci family didn't take my message well. They formed an alliance with 2 other families, the Carlucci and the Benedetti. Together, they're planning something. Planning what? War. The word dropped between them like a stone. They're calling it retribution for the Rossettis, but really it's about power. They see my protection of you as weakness, an opening to challenge my control of the city. Elena's stomach twisted. This is because of me. No. Victor crossed to the bed, sitting beside her and taking her hands. This is because greedy, stupid men think they can take what I've built. You're just the excuse they're using. If it wasn't you, they'd find something else. What are you going to do? End it. Permanently. His jaw was set, eyes hard with determination. I'm meeting with the other major families today, the ones who've stayed neutral. I'm going to give them a choice. Stand with me or be swept aside when this is over. That sounds dangerous. It is. Which is why you're staying here, in this penthouse, with a dozen guards and strict instructions not to let you leave for any reason. Elena started to protest, but Victor cut her off with a kiss that tasted like desperation and determination. Please, he said when he pulled back, please don't fight me on this. I can't think clearly if I'm worried about you, and I need to be completely focused today, because if I make one wrong move, this entire city burns. Okay. Elena cupped his face, feeling the tension in his jaw. I'll stay. I'll be safe. You focus on what you need to do. I'll be back before dark. If anything happens, if you feel even slightly unsafe, you call Antonio immediately. He's staying here with you while I take Sophia and the others. Victor left an hour later, dressed in an immaculate black suit that made him look every inch the dangerous man he was. Elena watched from the window as his convoy pulled away. 3 SUVs, all with tinted windows, all carrying armed men ready to kill or die for him. The day crawled by with agonizing slowness. Elena tried to distract herself with sketching, with reading, with anything that would quiet her racing mind. But every time her phone buzzed, her heart leaped into her throat. Antonio stationed himself by the elevator, stoic and alert, while other guards patrolled the building. Around noon, her phone rang with a number she recognized, her cousin Gabriella. Elena, thank heaven. Are you watching the news? No. Why? Turn it on. Channel 7. Now. Elena fumbled for the remote, turning on the massive television. The news anchor's face was grave as she reported breaking news. Violence erupted this morning in what police are calling gang-related activity across multiple locations in the city. Sources report at least 15 dead, dozens injured, and several businesses destroyed in what appears to be an escalating turf war between organized crime families. The screen cut to aerial footage of a warehouse engulfed in flames, then to a restaurant with shattered windows and bodies being wheeled out on gurneys. Authorities have yet to identify all the victims, But sources close to the investigation suggest this may be connected to recent power struggles within the city's criminal underworld. Police are asking anyone with information to... Elena muted the television, her hands shaking. 15 dead. Victor was out there somewhere, in the middle of this, and she had no way of knowing if he was safe. Her phone rang again. Victor's name flashed on the screen. "Are you all right?" she asked immediately. "I'm fine." Angry, but fine. She could hear sirens in the background, shouting. The Ricci Alliance struck first. Hit 3 of my businesses simultaneously. They're trying to draw me out, make me react emotionally. Are you going to? I already did. I just burned their primary distribution center to the ground and eliminated everyone inside. Now I'm heading to the meeting with the neutral families. The sense today, Elena, one way or another. Victor, please be careful. I will. I have something to come home to now. That makes me more careful and more dangerous at the same time. A pause, then his voice softened. I love you. Remember that, whatever happens today. I love you too. Come back to me. Always. The call ended and Elena sank onto the couch, fighting the urge to scream or cry or both. This was her life now, waiting while the man she loved waged war in the streets, hoping each time the phone rang that it wasn't someone calling to tell her he was dead. Antonio appeared in the doorway. Miss Rossi, you should eat something. Maria prepared lunch before she left this morning. I'm not hungry. Mr. DeLuca would want you to take care of yourself. Elena looked up at Antonio, this man who'd been nothing but professional and protective since she'd met him. How do you do it? How do you live like this, never knowing if he's going to come back? Antonio's expression softened slightly. I have faith in him. I've seen him survive things that should have killed him a dozen times over. He's smart, ruthless when he needs to be, and now he has something worth fighting for. That makes him nearly unstoppable. Nearly isn't the same as completely. No, but it's the best we get in this world. Elena forced herself to eat the lunch Maria had prepared, though it tasted like ash. The afternoon dragged on with excruciating slowness. News reports continued, each one more alarming than the last. The mayor had called for calm. The police commissioner promised increased patrols. Federal investigators were reportedly on their way to the city. And through it all, Victor fought his war in the shadows, reshaping the criminal landscape of the entire city through violence and calculated intimidation. Her phone buzzed with a text. Victor, meeting starting now. If you don't hear from me in 3 hours, Antonio has instructions. Trust him. Elena's blood ran cold. Instructions for what? What to do if Victor didn't survive the meeting? She typed back frantically. Don't talk like that. You're coming back. You promised. I intend to keep that promise. But if I can't, know that everything I have is yours. The penthouse, the estate, enough money to disappear and live comfortably anywhere in the world. Antonio will make sure you're safe. I don't want your money. I want you. Then I'll do everything in my power to come back to you. I love you, Elena, more than I thought I was capable of loving anything. The 3 hours that followed were the longest of Elena's life. She paced the penthouse like a caged animal, watched the clock creep forward with agonizing slowness, jumped at every sound. Antonio remained at his post, his expression carefully neutral, but she could see the tension in his shoulders. 2 hours and 45 minutes after Victor's last text, the elevator dinged. Elena's heart stopped. Antonio's hand went to his weapon, his body angling protectively in front of her. The doors opened slowly. Victor stepped out and Elena nearly collapsed with relief. He was alive, whole, though his suit was rumpled and there was a new cut on his jaw. But he was alive and walking toward her with purpose. Elena ran to him, throwing herself into his arms with enough force to make him stagger. He caught her, holding her tight against his chest, his face buried in her hair. I'm here. I'm all right. It's over. Over? What's over? Victor pulled back enough to see her face, and for the first time since she'd met him, he was smiling, actually smiling, genuine and relieved. The war, the threats, all of it. The neutral families sided with me unanimously. The Ricci alliance crumbled the moment they realized they were isolated. Marco Ricci himself begged for mercy. Did you give it to him? Victor's smile faded. I gave him his life, but nothing else. His organization is dissolved, his assets seized, his family scattered. He'll live, but he'll live knowing he lost everything by challenging me. The others will remember that. So it's really over? We're safe? As we can be in this world. There will always be new threats, new challengers. But for now, the message is clear. Touching you, threatening you, even thinking about using you against me means total annihilation. He cupped her face in both hands, his thumbs brushing away tears she didn't realize she'd shed. We can breathe now, Elena. We can actually start building something instead of just surviving. Over the next few weeks, Elena watched Victor transform his empire with the same ruthless efficiency he'd used to defend it. But this time, the changes were different. He began legitimizing operations, converting cash businesses into legal enterprises, establishing legitimate investment portfolios, even setting up charitable foundations. I'm not going clean entirely, he explained one evening as they reviewed documents in his study. That would show weakness, create a power vacuum. But I can shift enough that what I leave behind for you isn't built entirely on blood. For me, Victor set down his pen and pulled her into his lap. Everything I do now is for you, for us, for the possibility of a future where we're not always looking over our shoulders. That's a beautiful dream. It's more than a dream. I'm making it real. He kissed her softly. I want to marry you, Elena. I want to build something with you that lasts beyond violence and fear. I want to give you everything. Elena's heart stuttered. Are you asking me or telling me? Asking, always asking when it comes to you. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Elena Rossi, will you marry a monster who's trying desperately to become a man? Will you stand beside me and help me remember what it means to be human? Will you let me spend the rest of my life protecting you, loving you, and building something beautiful in the ruins of what I've been? The ring was stunning, a deep red ruby surrounded by diamonds, unique and bold, and nothing like the traditional engagement rings Elena had seen before. It was perfect. Yes, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Yes, to all of it. To you, to us, to this impossible, beautiful future we're building together. Victor slipped the ring on her finger, then kissed her with a tenderness that still surprised her every time. When he pulled back, his eyes were suspiciously bright. I never thought I'd have this. Never thought I deserved it. Maybe you didn't, but you do now. We both do. The months that followed were a whirlwind of change. Victor systematically restructured his organization, pushing more operations toward legitimacy while maintaining enough of the old ways to keep his power base secure. Elena returned to work at the gallery, but now as a partner rather than just a manager. Victor had purchased a controlling interest and given it to her as an engagement present. I want you to have something that's yours, he'd said. Something you built, not just something I gave you. She also started a foundation focused on supporting young artists from disadvantaged backgrounds. Kids like she'd been, talented but lacking resources. Victor funded it generously, and Elena threw herself into the work with passion that had been dormant for years. They split their time between the penthouse and the estate, creating a life that balanced Victor's dangerous world with Elena's need for normalcy. It wasn't perfect. There were still threats, still moments of terror when old enemies tested their resolve. But together, they faced each challenge and emerged stronger. 6 months after Victor's proposal, on a crisp spring morning, Elena stood in the garden of the estate wearing a simple white dress that Maria had helped her choose. The ceremony was small, just a handful of people who'd become family. Antonio stood as Victor's best man. Sophia as Elena's maid of honor. Maria wept openly in the front row. Gabriella had come too, despite her husband's misgivings, and stood with tears running down her face as she watched her cousin marry the most dangerous man in the city. Victor waited at the altar in a black suit, and when Elena started walking toward him, the look on his face made her breath catch. Pure love, pure devotion, barely contained emotion. When she reached him, he took her hands and whispered, "You saved me. You know that, right? From myself, from the darkness, from becoming something completely irredeemable. You saved me." "We saved each other," Elena whispered back. The officiant spoke about love and commitment, about choosing each other every day despite the odds. But Elena barely heard the words. She was too focused on Victor's eyes, on the way his hands trembled slightly as he slid the wedding band onto her finger, on the absolute certainty that this was exactly where she was meant to be. "You may kiss your bride." Victor pulled her close and kissed her with a tenderness that still made her knees weak. The small gathering erupted in applause, and when they pulled apart, both were smiling through tears. "Mrs. DeLuca," Victor murmured against her lips. "That's going to take some getting used to. We have the rest of our lives to figure it out." The reception was intimate and joyful, nothing like the lavish wedding where they'd first met. This was about them, about the people who mattered, about celebrating something that had been born in danger but strengthened by choice. Later, as the sun set and painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, Victor pulled Elena away from the crowd to stand at the edge of the garden where they could see the lake glittering in the fading light. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked quietly. "That kiss at the wedding? Everything that came after?" Elena thought about the woman she'd been, invisible, safe, quietly desperate for something more. Thought about everything she'd survived, everything she'd witnessed, all the ways she'd had to adapt and grow and become someone stronger than she'd ever imagined. "Not for a second," she said firmly. "That kiss was the bravest thing I've ever done. And everything since then, the fear, the danger, the violence, it was worth it. You were worth it. We were worth it." "I love you," Victor said, pulling her close. "More than power, more than empire, more than anything I've ever built or destroyed. You're the best thing I never knew I needed. I love you too, monster and man and everything in between." They stood together as darkness fell, watching the first stars emerge in the deepening sky. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Victor's world would never be completely safe, and they both knew it. But they also knew they could face anything together. In the months that followed, they continued building their life with deliberate intention. Victor established more legitimate businesses, creating a foundation of legal wealth that could support their future. The criminal empire still existed. It had to, or someone worse would fill the vacuum, but it became more about maintaining order and less about expansion through violence. Elena's gallery flourished, becoming a respected venue for emerging artists. Her foundation helped dozens of young people find their creative voices, giving them opportunities she'd once dreamed of having. She even started painting again herself, creating pieces that explored darkness and light, violence and beauty, the complicated space between monster and man. One evening, nearly a year after their wedding, Victor found her in her studio working on a new piece, an abstract that showed shadows giving way to dawn, chaos transforming into order. "That's beautiful," he said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "What's it called?" "Redemption," Elena said, leaning back against his chest. "Or maybe choosing love. I haven't decided yet. Both work." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "I have something to tell you. I've decided to step back from the day-to-day operations. Antonio is taking over as head of the organization." Elena turned in his arms, searching his face. "Are you sure? That's a huge change." "I'm sure. I've spent 20 years building an empire, Elena. I want to spend the next 20 building a life. With you. Maybe a family, if you want that. Definitely a future that's about more than just survival." "A family?" Elena's hand unconsciously moved to her stomach, where a secret she'd only just discovered was beginning to grow. Victor noticed the gesture, his eyes widening. "Elena, are you... I found out this morning. I was going to tell you tonight over dinner, but..." She laughed, overwhelmed and joyful. "Yes, we're having a baby." Victor's expression cycled through shock, fear, and finally pure joy. He dropped to his knees, pressing his face against her stomach, his shoulders shaking with emotion. "A baby," he whispered. "We're having a baby." Elena ran her fingers through his hair, tears streaming down her face. "Are you happy? I know this is sudden, and with your world being what it is..." "I'm terrified," Victor admitted, looking up at her with wet eyes. "But I'm also happier than I've ever been. This child will have everything I didn't: safety, love, a father who's there. I'll make sure of it. We'll make sure of it. Together." Victor stood, cradling her face in his hands. "I promise you, Elena. I promise our child. I'll be better than what I was. I'll build a legacy of more than violence. I'll create something worth inheriting." And he did. Over the next months, as Elena's pregnancy progressed, Victor transformed from crime boss to something more complex. A man straddling two worlds, maintaining enough power to keep them safe, while building legitimate enterprises that would provide for their child's future. The baby arrived on a snowy December evening, a daughter with Elena's dark hair and Victor's intense eyes. They named her Sophia, after Sophia Marchetti, a reminder of what they'd survived and why they fought to build something better. Victor held his daughter with the same hands that had killed countless men, and Elena watched as something in him finally completely healed. The monster receded. The man emerged. Not perfect, never perfect, but trying, always trying. Years passed. Sophia grew surrounded by love and protection, aware of her father's past, but raised in a world where art and beauty mattered as much as power. The empire Victor had built slowly transformed into something that could survive scrutiny, legitimate on the surface, with just enough teeth underneath to keep predators at bay. Elena's gallery became one of the most prestigious in the city. Her foundation helped hundreds of young artists find their voices. She painted when inspiration struck, creating pieces that sold for increasingly impressive amounts, all of which she donated back to causes that mattered. And Victor became the man Elena had seen glimpses of that first night at the wedding. Still dangerous when he needed to be, still capable of ruthless decisions, but also capable of tenderness, of laughter, of sitting on the floor and playing tea party with their daughter like she was the most important person in the world. Because she was. They both were. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Victor planned to return to the Plaza Meridian Hotel, the same ballroom where they'd first met. It had been renovated since then, but the bones were the same. The chandelier still cast prismatic light. The marble floors still gleamed. "Do you remember?" Victor asked as they moved onto the dance floor, their daughter safely home with Maria. "Every second," Elena said, sliding into his arms. "I remember seeing you across the room and thinking you looked dangerous. I was dangerous, still am, when it comes to protecting you. I remember watching you in the garden and knowing I should run. You should have. Would have been the smart choice. I remember kissing you and feeling my entire life change in that instant." Victor pulled her closer until they were swaying together like they had that first night. "Best worst decision you ever made." "Oh, best decision I ever made," Elena corrected. "The only one that mattered." They danced as the orchestra played something classical and romantic, and Elena thought about the journey that had brought them here. The fear, the violence, the impossible choices, but also the love, the growth, the transformation of two broken people into something whole. "What are you thinking?" Victor asked. "That I'd do it all again? Every terrifying moment, every dangerous choice. All of it, just to end up here with you." "You're sure? No regrets about the quiet life you could have had?" Elena laughed. "That life was killing me slowly. You gave me a reason to live fully, even if it meant living dangerously. You gave me purpose, passion, a family. You gave me everything that matters. You gave me more. You gave me redemption, a chance to be something other than the monster I'd become. You saw humanity in me when I'd forgotten it existed." They continued dancing as other couples joined them on the floor, oblivious to the history contained in this moment. Just another married couple at an event, celebrating their love, looking toward their future. But Elena knew better. She knew what they'd survived to get here, knew the bodies buried, the enemies destroyed, the violence wielded in their defense, knew that their love had been forged in fire and tempered by blood, and she knew it was worth it, every impossible, dangerous, beautiful moment of it. As the song ended, Victor dipped her low, then pulled her up for a kiss that tasted like champagne and promises. "I love you, Elena DeLuca. My wife. My salvation. My reason for becoming better than what I was. I love you, Victor DeLuca, my husband, my protector. My reminder that monsters can become men when love is brave enough to see their humanity." They left the ballroom hand in hand, walking past the garden where it had all begun, past the terrace where she'd been reckless enough to kiss a dangerous man, past all the places where their story had started with danger and fear, walking toward a future built on choice, on love, on the understanding that sometimes the most dangerous decision is the one that saves you. Elena looked back once at the ballroom, remembering the invisible girl she'd been. Then she turned forward, toward the life she'd built, the man she'd chosen. the family they'd created together. And she smiled, knowing that reckless kiss 5 years ago hadn't destroyed her life. It had given her one worth living. No matter how dark the world around them became, they would always find their way back to each other. They would always choose love over safety, together over alone, redemption over damnation. Because some love stories begin in danger, but the best ones, the ones worth fighting for, are strengthened by it. And theirs was a love story worth every dangerous, beautiful, impossible moment, forever.